a nice copper coin. But Doug, do you know what time it is?
45 up.
Who says 45 of, Doug? It's quarter after. What's up, guys? Quarter here, and welcome to what I think is going to be a really interesting, fun show with a guest that we don't normally have on. We're going to be talking about some of the stranger things that happen right here in America. I'm talking the discovery of giant bones. I'm talking about Egyptians that once lived in the Grand Canyon, UFOs, all that kind of stuff, gold hidden in caves. Our good guest, Terry Carter, is going to be coming on at 7:30. It should be one really fun, interesting show. And as far as I saw in the news, there's nothing else interesting happening today, right? Psych. But hey, thank you everybody for being here. Let me bring in, of course, some of the co-hosts, Mr. Dog Tag Doug, Mexican Doug, Jane Fond Doug. How are you, Dougie?
I'm doing well. How's everyone tonight?
We're doing good, Doug. I'm excited. Now, I also want to say this is the first guest we've ever had on that Dog Tag Doug facilitated. He said, "Hey, Jay, I watched this guy. He's really cool. Do you want to have him on?" I said, "Go for it." Doug messaged him. Doug did everything. So kudos to you, Doug, for your first guest on the Quarter After show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure it'll be exciting and enlightening, to be sure.
Yeah, I'm excited.
And it's a different aspect of treasure hunting than we're familiar with, but very interesting nonetheless.
Oh, no doubt about it. Let me say a couple of hellos before I bring the gang in. Two moderators are here. Alicia, Hot Mess Fishing. Thank you for showing up. Alicia's going to a cool event, I think this weekend in Missouri. She's going to be giving seminars on gold and detecting. So kudos to Alicia, Hot Mess Fishing. She can plug that in the chat if she likes. And Teresa, the treasure hunter. Thank you. Teresa, always on top of links and everything I need. She's like omnipotent, Doug. She knows what I'm going to say, and she puts the right links up there. So thank you for Teresa. A couple hellos, too. Show Me Treasure, our good friend, talking about Missouri. Digging up the Carolinas. Oh, Ron Eglantowitz. New name for me. Ron, how are you, sir? Tenacious Thorn, Leon. No, this is not pre-recorded, Leon. This is live. Great Finds is here. Former guest of ours. Thank you very much. 5 Mile Relic Hunter, NEPA, History and Archaeology Search, Coils for Foils. I got some questions for the chat later, too. Wendy Olson's here. Should be a really fun show. Let me bring in a few of the co-hosts. I'll bring in the handsome and charismatic Charles, the Heritage Relic Hunter. How are you, Charlie?
Thanks for the compliment.
Always handsome, Charlie.
It was a hot day here, very hot, 90 degrees, and I was ready to go back to the swimming pool where we detected last week.
It was filled with dirt.
Yeah, we did good
well,
there.
At least dream about it.
Yeah, we did good. You know, Doug, talking about the show tonight, the only thing in my life that might be more mysterious than these giants is Charlie. So
yes.
I'm glad he made it tonight.
Yes.
The enigma of Charlie.
Thanks for the invite, guys. Yeah. I'm glad to be here.
And let's bring in the bearded wonder himself, Mr. Rich Van Winkle, who is slightly blurry today. Slightly blurry.
Yeah.
I was just cleaning my lenses, and it didn't seem to help.
Yeah, everyone else is going to have to clean their lenses because
is that the Canadian smoke that's filtering down there?
No, it's.
I'm not sure.
It's
honestly,
clear.
Doug, honestly, Rich looks a little better, slightly blurry anyway.
Yeah. Not as ominous looking.
Yeah. I want to try to include some questions in the chat because, like I said, the topics tonight are really new to me. I think it's going to be fascinating because I never even heard of some of these things before. And Terry's going to come on and have some first account stories of people that seen these things, touched these things. So I'm really excited to really pique the interest and learn something new. Doug, what did you see of Terry's that first caught your attention that you wanted to have him on as a guest?
Well, I like the stories about the Spanish who moved up from Mexico and mined silver and gold out of the mountains of Utah in that area. And a lot of it they couldn't take back, and they've hidden it. And, there's maps allegedly that might indicate where those stashes of gold and silver are. But he's always got an interesting guest that he interviews that has some, connection with that specific treasure. And, he's just an interesting guy. So I figured some of our audience might enjoy listening to some of these stories.
Yeah, I agree. I watched a bunch of them this week. I mean, he's got hundreds and hundreds, maybe over 1,000 videos of different interviews and things. So I couldn't possibly watch them all. But, if you sit down with the right person that can really tell the story, it's so interesting. One of them, I watched the whole thing. This guy was like paragliding over the Grand Canyon, and he was like spotting doors and hidden caves and like Egyptian. It just was like, wow, like I never heard of this.
Yeah.
So I was curious. I was going to pose a question to the chat, Doug, to see if anybody out there, do you guys think that there's more to the history we've been taught, or has what we've been taught is all that really happened? Like, is there more out there, whether they're hiding it or it's just not sure or suppressed? Are you guys open-minded to maybe some things that we just aren't taught in grade school? So, Charlie, how about you in grade school? Any talk of giants or?
Well, when I was standing in the corner a lot, I used to think about the historical past. A lot of things out there that we still don't know about, like the Egyptians. Supposedly, Egyptians were here. The Vikings were here. I'm a believer in some of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. When you and Doug each found your Roman coins,
oh, that's right.
I had a good number of comments and messages from people saying that they believe that these old civilizations were over here. And, I didn't really think about it because I don't know. I didn't study that stuff in school. But, none of us were around back then. I guess It's possible. And, those are the kind of things that it's going to be interesting to hear about. Different perspectives, maybe a different truth than we've never been told before. Rich, you're a big Viking fan. What do you think of the possibility of these other civilizations that made it over here?
I think it's totally possible. And the more you look into the Roman coins, there's thousands of them that have been found in America. So it's strange. And yeah, we didn't think the Vikings were here, and then we proved they were here. So you just never know.
No, I agree.
They could definitely cross the oceans. We know that back then. So
yeah, wasn't there like a land bridge that when the Ice Age came, it formed like a land bridge from the other continents, and people crossed over. And then when the Earth warmed up and that ice bridge melted, that kind of separated the continents, or something along those lines. Doug, have you heard that theory?
Well, the Bering Strait.
Yeah, I was just going to say, keep in mind the proximity of land up in the Bering Straits. You could easily traverse that in a boat and begin your migration down through Canada, Yukon, Canada, and go anywhere in this country. So
yeah, there's some people that obviously are going to know way more than me in the chat. NEPA said History and Archaeology starts saying 12,000 years ago. That's when that land bridge, I guess, was there. So anybody in the chat, I'm going to really try to keep an eye on it. If you have something to contribute, something cool to say, type it in. I'm going to try to catch it, and I'll throw it up on the screen. If you have questions for Terry, put them up on the screen, and we'll try to ask him. I'm going to kind of give him the floor because I don't know much about that. It's going to be a learning experience for everybody. Yeah, for all of us. By the way, Lynn couldn't make it tonight. Lynn's away on a little mini vacation. Won't be detecting with us this weekend either. So we'll miss Lynn, but I know she's here in spirit. Now here's one. Treadwell Taxi said 13,000 years ago, Canada was under 2 miles of ice.
Wow.
Yeah, it's possible. And again, I don't know, but it certainly sounds like Easter Island. So many mysteries of these strange things. But I was so captivated, Doug. I don't know if you saw part of my thumbnail. I was so captivated by stories of these giants. I think he called them specifically Nephilim giants, which it might be like
it's Nephilim.
Nephilim. Is that like a biblical term?
It's a biblical term. They were offspring of fallen angels who mated with women, and the offspring were Nephilim, and they referred to them as fellers, Fellers, because they were the brutes, the bullies of the era. So
gotcha.
They were pretty big in stature.
Yeah. In fact, I was joking before the show when you guys came on that they kind of look like Rich. I wonder if Rich is a relative of these Nephilim giants.
I'm not big enough, but you might be, Jason.
I can't grow a beard that luscious.
Yeah.
but I just thought it was really interesting. I know very little about it, Doug, so I'm really excited. Charlie was asking before the show if Terry may have heard any of these stories about what was it, like the lost Civil War gold, Charlie?
Yeah, you said he's into lost gold and stuff, but mostly I guess out west. But that Confederate gold in PA, I think supposedly it was found, secretly taken away recently within the last 2-3 years. I'm not sure exactly, the time, but I think it was, within a few years they supposedly found it and kept it quiet.
Well, we could ask him. I remember when that happened. It was seemed like it was maybe like 5 years ago.
Possibly, time flies by, but the FBI supposedly was there and they surrounded it and kept everybody out, and that was it. You didn't hear much more about it.
Yeah, they at the end of like a week of them being there 24/7
with heavy equipment.
They said, "Oh, we didn't find anything," and then you never heard about it again.
Right.
So, I'm not sure if I was buying it or not, Dougie, but you never know. What time is it? I'm going to bring Terry in 1 minute. I see him in the green room. So I'm like I said, I'm really excited to get into it. We're going to try to go through all these different things, cover as much as we can in an hour or so. We'll have to see. So anybody, like I said, if you have a question, a contribution, throw it in the chat, and I will try to keep my eyes out, Dougie.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
Sounds good.
All right. So let me bring him in, Doug. If you're not familiar with him, because last week I wasn't, Terry Carter. He's got a YouTube channel, big following, Facebook, big following, probably other social medias, where he goes into these stories of lost and forgotten history, like I said, of so many different things. I'm just touching on the tip of the iceberg here. But he dives into some of these, reaches out and interviews people that had firsthand knowledge, over 1,000 videos of him talking to different people that saw this or touched that or found this, discovered that. So he has all these stories, like a giant Rolodex in his brain. And we're going to try to pick through a couple of them and see what we can learn today. So let me bring him in. One and only, of course, handsome and charismatic, Mr. Terry Carter. What was that? Oh, there he is. What was that? Can you
You're on, Terry.
I can't hear you guys. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you.
If you can hear me, check your mute button because we can hear you.
Can you guys hear me? Because I can't hear you. I can't hear a word you guys are saying.
That's weird.
We can hear you.
I heard you fine before, but I can't hear you now.
Terry, if you can hear me, I'm going to kick you out and then come back in again. Just click on the link and come back in.
He
I don't know
can't
what
hear
you're
you.
saying.
You can't hear us?
I can't hear you at all.
I'm going to text you. Hold on.
Oh, there you are. Okay, I got you. It was my problem.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it couldn't be Jay.
I can hear you, so I don't know. I had no idea what you were saying. I thought, man, these guys has muted me right up. So they're talking about me. I don't even know what they're saying.
We said nothing but good stuff.
Yeah, nothing but good stuff. I mean, Doug was saying that he doesn't think you're very good looking, and I said, Doug, stop it.
Like I say, I have no clue what you guys were saying because I never heard a word. But first, I just got to say, man, that I'm honored that you guys would even think of asking me onto your show. So thank you.
Oh, it's our pleasure. We're really excited about it. Like I said, we have a lot of treasure hunters on and people that we're out there always finding things. But you bring a whole different genre of stories that I think could be a really interesting to a lot of people out here. So, if you don't mind starting off, Terry, what first got you into this world of forgotten legends and the untold history? Was there a moment that sparked your interest all those years ago?
So, yeah, originally, I was strictly treasure hunting, looking for the lost Spanish gold mines, the lost Spanish gold bars. I wanted to find me a pile of Spanish gold bars. But I'd heard a story where the pioneers had found these caves up in some mountains high up in the cliffs by near where I lived. And they said it had the names and dates of the pioneers written in charcoal in these caves. And I thought that'd be pretty cool to see. So I spent a lot of weekends scouring the cliffs, scouring the mountains, looking for these. And I come across a unique set of hieroglyphs. I mean, these aren't Indian writings. These were hieroglyphs. I mean, the best way to kind of like Egyptian hieroglyphs. I'd never seen anything like that before. And I first thought, well, maybe this is Spanish treasure symbols. And I researched that and I thought, nope, this ain't Spanish treasure symbols. I thought, well, maybe this has to do with Montezuma's treasure and the Aztec gold. So I researched a lot about that and it wasn't that. And I researched a lot of different things, and trying to figure out what these things said and what they were. Led me on a wild ride all across the western United States, filled with anywhere from death and deception on one side of the spectrum to the joy and amazement of being able to hear stories and seeing artifacts and man, that just blew my mind, and trying to uncover what these were even more. I stumbled onto a set of documents, records, and journals that wasn't meant for me to see. And when I seen what was there, man, I spent hundreds of dollars photocopying that. And that changed me from just going after Spanish treasure and that to on the trail of the ancients and the ancient treasures. So
was there a specific claim of all the ones you've heard over the years that you thought was the most fascinating? Like for me, when I saw your videos on these giants, I was mesmerized. Is there one for you that just really gets you stoked when you hear a new story about one particular mysterious aspect of the Old West?
There is a lot of stories out there and a lot, but one that's touches me the most is the story of Brewer's Cave and the Giants. When this was part of these documents that I stumbled onto. When I first seen all this, it had, it didn't have the location, but it had the stories. It had everybody that was involved with it. It had, so I tracked down everybody that had anything to do with it, and I interviewed everybody, but I didn't know if this story of these giants and stone sarcophagus and ancient records, I didn't know if this was true. I'd heard stories about the catacombs in Ecuador and the metallic library that was found there and that, but I didn't know anything about giants. The only thing I knew about giants was Jack and the Beanstalk and David and Goliath. I didn't know that this was a real viable story. But still it sounded interesting. So I tracked everybody down. I recorded everybody. I interviewed everybody. And then I got the notes of the people that passed away. I gathered all their notes. Well, I tracked down one guy, this Brewer's Cave. It had stone boxes in it with records written on metal plates. And these stone boxes was wrapped in cedar bark and then smeared with pine pitch and then smeared with mud, so they looked like dirt clods. There was a wall built on them, and so it just looked like a wall, you know, and it sounded like a far-fetched story to me, but I tracked down a guy that had one of these boxes that was given to him out of this cave, and he was supposed to do some research on it and didn't really do any research on it. So I got that box, and with a group of friends and an organization, man, we had the bark on that thing carbon dated. I wanted to know if this story was real. And if the story was real, that bark has to be old. So we had it carbon dated, and the university we took it to, they knew what it was. They thought this was bogus. They thought it was going to come back baseline, plus or minus 200 years, you know. But when it came back at 2,500 years, and it blew their mind. They didn't believe that. They thought they screwed up. Wow. So they ran the test again, and again it came back 2,500 BC. And 10 times they ran that test, and 10 times it came back at 2,500 BC. Well, they got looking and seeing, man, can't be real. So at the same time, they was carbon dating some other things that came back way older than what they thought it should be. And so they got checking, and they did screw up, man. They got a different solution, and their machine wasn't calibrated for that solution. And so when they recalibrated the machine and put everything back to what it was, the date of this bark on this box with these records on metal plates, these writings on metal plates, it came back at between 50 and 350 BC, which is still ancient to me, and says, man, there's some credibility. There has to be something to this story. But what interested me was it just wasn't a one and done. They did it 10 times.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That got me excited. And I started spending a lot of time looking for Brewer's Cave.
So when you first heard of this, was there a piece of proof that anyone ever showed you? Is a lot of it more of like intuition and gut instinct? Because I try to think about some of these weird things where, Doug, if I told you, like, if you were new to this planet and I said, oh yeah, millions of years ago, there were these giant 100-foot lizards that ran around with big teeth, and you'd think I'm crazy. But that doesn't mean that didn't happen. It just, you wouldn't be aware of it. Was there moments when you were like, is this more fiction? And then there's like certain key things where you'd be like, oh man, there's really something to this. And then you have to dive deeper and deeper and try to prove it to other non-believers.
In the beginning, man, it was hard for me to believe until I got the carbon date. I didn't even, like I said, I didn't know anything about giants. This was before the internet. You can find all kinds of things about giants on the internet now. Back then, there was no internet. I had to do a lot of interlibrary loans. I mean, I can't tell you how many interlibrary loans I had to do to get the information, And there just wasn't a lot on the giants. But slowly, I started finding newspaper articles. Slowly, I started finding information. And slowly, I thought, well, I guess maybe there could be a thing of giants. But then what really nailed it for me was when we got that carbon dating back, on that box, because that supposedly was found in with these giants in stone sarcophaguses. So, that was... The bark was what nailed it for me. The carbon dating on the bark. That's what nailed it for me. And then, but slowly I started hearing other stories, and talked to other treasure hunters who had found, one guy claimed that he'd broken into a catacomb with all kinds of incredible things. But he says, these crystal stone sarcophaguses, and you could see the people laying in them through the crystal, and it says it looked like maybe they was just sleeping. Well, that sounds like a far-fetched story, but I believe this guy was telling me the truth. And then I found online where there's these sarcophaguses found in Russia, and they was pulling them out, and one dropped, and it had a liquid in it, but the people in them in this liquid, they looked like they were real. They were just sleeping, but as soon as they dropped one, the liquid came out, man, and he crumbled the bones, the body,
disintegrated,
Wow. Yeah.
So that put a little bit of credence. Maybe there was something like that this guy found. I hear a lot of incredible stories, and some I got to roll my eyes out, and I think, yeah, right. And even they show me proof and some rocks and things they've got, and I still rolling my eyes. But then I think to myself, who am I to judge what they found, what their research is? You know, who am I to say they're right, they're wrong, and
Right.
yeah, maybe I'm up in the night, So I don't judge. I just listen to people's story, but I do kind of judge that. I think, man, I think there is a possibility of this story, or there's not, because I've heard some incredible stories.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into some of the stories. A couple of shouts I want to say. Show Me Treasure, friend Chris, thank you very much for the super chat. And Zach G sent one. He said, "Hey Terry, where do you find your research documents and historical records? Is there a place that you go today? I know you said you used to go to the library, and everyone knows the internet. Are there specific websites that you use as a resource, or maybe bounce other ideas off other people that are believing in this stuff and trying to get this information out to the rest of the world? Are there forums? How do you try to collectively share this information with the world other than your own personal social media?"
So first, before I answer that, Becca Tedder says Blurry Creature podcast gets into this history. Blurry Creature had me on their podcast. Them guys are a bunch of great guys, just like you. They've got a lot of great information. So my best is you talk to the old timers, and they're dying. They're gone. There's so much information, man, that's buried under a gravestone somewhere. They give all that information to them. You need to talk to the old timers. They've got a lot of great stories, and they don't tell them because they don't think anybody wants to hear. Some of the old museums in some of these old towns, they've got some great information. But other than that, yeah, there's all kinds of information at your fingertips on the internet nowadays that just didn't used to be. You got to be careful on what some of that information is, because I know that there are specifically, I've caught them, people that tell lies, do modify or create situations and that just for notoriety, and
sure.
So you got to be cautious on what you do, and if you find a story that you believe, you got to kind of track it down to make sure it's not just a fictitious story that somebody. I mean, back in the old treasure magazines that always came out, there was a lot of fictitious stories that was made back then in all them treasure magazines that was billed as true historic, treasure, leads. That really wasn't. They was made up by that guy, that author.
Yeah, I'm sure and that probably, you get these made up stories and it muddies the water on the stories that you're trying to show could be real. And then it makes people be more skeptical. And you have a harder battle.
Big time.
Are there any really good stories that you started off skeptical, and then based on more stories and more accounts, or maybe some research you've done, that you swayed and then became a believer in?
Yeah, where I live and what really got me treasure hunting, I live in Utah, and the Uinta Mountains are right close to me. And the Uinta Mountains, there's a story that the Spaniards was tracking down Montezuma when Cortez came into and got enslaved, captured the Aztecs, or was getting their gold, seen all the gold they had. The Aztecs chased them out. Well, they took their treasure and took it back to their ancient native homeland. Nobody knows where that's. Yeah, some people still think it's in Mexico. Some people think it's in Texas, some New Mexico. I think it's here in Utah. Well, the Spaniards, for whatever reason, they was tracking down Montezuma and his treasure, and they tracked him down to the Uinta Mountains, and the Spaniards seen that the Indians had some gold. So they started enslaving the Indians. They started torturing the Indians, finding out where they got this gold. And then they put the Indians, they enslaved them and made them work the mines, and they worked until they died, till to death.
Wow.
The Indians didn't like that program. They hated that
It's
program.
not.
So
They didn't have a real good union then.
no. so they banded together. They sent out runners and got all the other surrounding tribes to come in and help them, and they battled them Spaniards. They kicked them out of the area, and then and killed them off and chased them out, and then it was because it was such bad medicine for them. They took whatever it took for them to bury them gold bars, for them to take if it took the whole tribe the whole summer, a whole year to bury up that mine, man, they did that. They tried to wipe out all trace of the Spaniards was being there so that nobody'd come up. So that was a story that I heard. Well, it just so happened that I did a lot of hunting in the Uinta Mountains, and I started seeing some of the things that these books was talking about, and so at first I was a little bit, because I'd never heard of anything like that. I was a little bit skeptical, but then I started seeing some of the markings, and then I started becoming friends with some of the old timers who had found some. I have one friend, and I can tell this now. People tell you things in confidence, and you can't tell anything, but he's passed away now, so I can tell this. I never seen the full thing, but I seen a couple of them, and I held a couple of them. I had a friend that found 400 gold bars. The smallest one was 12 pounds. They're not pure gold. It had a lot of iron in it, a lot of copper. I think it was, and I don't remember. This was so long ago. It was like 58% gold, and then the rest was a bunch of other stuff. So I seen the evidences, but then at the same time, there's a lot of fake evidences made, of fake stuffs, also to go along with this. So it's hard to sift through what's right and what's wrong. You just have to track back the earliest information. When you find a reference in a book, you got to track it back farther and track that back farther and keep on going. See if you can't find family ties. See if they have any family history, on that. If they can shed some light on that, it's just. The key is just like with you guys, research to put you in the right spot. If you're not in the right spot, if you don't have the correct research, you're not going to be finding anything.
Right.
Yeah. There's an archaeologist, a scientist, and I don't remember her name. She's a doctor out in your area right now, in that Utah area, trying to prove Cortez's route back out of there. And she's been using some ground penetrating radar and different detectors that Nokta Center. So I've been kind of like getting the occasional updates on her. And she apparently found some of like Cortez's like spear points and different things that she's able to prove that Cortez was in this area that historians didn't think he was ever in. And I'm probably butchering the facts, but she's a guest that we might have coming on in the future weeks, and just goes to prove that whatever story she's chasing, where her colleagues probably thought, oh, you're crazy, this didn't happen that way, she's proving it otherwise with facts. Do you get a hard time where, when I see these things of the dinosaur, the giant bones? I heard some of the guests that you spoke with, and the stories were amazing. But I mean, of course, you want to say, like, do you have one? Can you show me one? Do you have a picture of one? How often do you get some sort of physical proof that you can now say, here's a smoking gun, guys, to kind of further your cause, to make more believers out of people that might be skeptical?
So man, when you have that lady on, I'd like to let me know. Man.
I will. I forget her name. Darn it. If Mark's in the chat later, I'll get her name.
I don't know if Cortez made it up here, but the Spaniards made it up here, and they're finding all kinds of Spanish artifacts. And it blows my mind if she's willing to go against mainstream academia, saying that the Spaniards on here. That's career suicide for her to do that.
I'll see if I can bring up the Facebook post while you're telling me about your thing.
No, I forgot what you asked me, man. Wait till you get my age, man. Then you'll
okay. I was asking, like, have you gotten things in the past where you have physical, tangible proof to help, turn some skeptics over? Like maybe a shard of a giant's bone, or like you said, those gold bars that were kind of crude and were still mixed with ore. Like, how often do you get tangible evidence to go with the stories and things that you're going to have more faith in than proof? How often do you get those
So
tangible?
as far as the Giants go, when they enacted NAGPRA, the Native American Repatriation Act, anything that had to deal with human remains or anything, they had to repatriate them and bury them, so they're no longer around to study. There's stories that the newspaper articles way back, from the 1800s on up, there was all kinds of stories of giants being found, and even in the Smithsonian, in their, and I forget the congressional whatever, I can't remember. They mentioned that they dug up some large giants, and that's even in their reports back in the 1800s. Well, to combat that, they say, well, these weren't real archaeologists, they didn't know what they was talking about, But all the newspaper articles, everything, anytime anything of giant has been found, it's been hidden away. And I think, why? What does it matter if somebody finds a giant? What does that matter? And it makes zero sense to me. There's stories that the Smithsonian is hiding the evidence. And is that true? I don't know. It makes no sense that they would hide it. But there's all these, I know a guy personally, he found a giant skull when he was a kid. And they called in the archaeologist and they roped the whole thing off. He thought, man, I found it. We'll be able to come in here and watch him. And they wouldn't let him even where near. So he thought, well, this will be big news. This will be in the newspaper. This will be on TV. Nothing. Not one thing he never heard another word.
Wow.
I believe this guy is telling the truth. I've met other people that I had a guy contact me and he says, hey, my friend found a cavern with some giants in it, and he's going to take me in. And I told him I'm going to take you too. And I says, great, man, let's go. But that's right when COVID hit. So we waited. Well, COVID hit him and he died. So it's another one of them stories that are, there's subtle things. L.A. Marzulli, he found out that on Catalina Island there was an archaeologist who uncovered some giants, and he had some photos of the bones next to him, and they had this in one of the buildings there on Catalina Island, and L.A. Marzulli, found that, and they started measuring the bones to the archaeologist who's there, and they see, man, these were bona fide giants. Well, now photos have disappeared. Why? There's things like that. And there's a bunch of, like going back to this lady talking about the Spaniards up here, the mainstream academia, they don't want to hear that. They said, no, the Spaniards never made it up this far, that early, well, it's the same with out-of-place artifacts. I've talked to several archaeological students who they found some out-of-place archaeological things, like somebody was talking to me, I seen in the chat about the Kensington runestone, something that just didn't fit. It wasn't Native American, Well, one guy, he dug deeper than what he was supposed to, and he came up with this, and I forget what he said it was, but it was an out-of-place artifact. He went to take it to him, and they got mad at him for digging so deep, and they wouldn't record it into the records because they said it was a one-off. It doesn't fit the narrative we're building here. It doesn't fit this time frame. I had another a friend who he was almost ready to graduate in anthropology, and the same thing happened to him. He found a unique out-of-place artifact. He went to enter it in the books, and they wouldn't enter it into the books. And they says, man, we don't, it doesn't fit the narrative. And I'm thinking to myself, that happens all the time. All these out-of-place artifacts that prove that there was intercontinental travel before Columbus, that proves that there was giants, that prove, all that stuff is being dismissed because it's a one-off. You know, if all that stuff was categorized and whatnot, we would start to have some kind of a picture of what really took place, because it doesn't fit the narrative, because it's disregarded, it's not written down, it's forgotten. And that's what's happening with the giants, with the out of place artifacts and things like that, you know. And there's so many stories of that it's crazy. And why? I don't know. You know, they're just now starting to admit, well, yeah, maybe the Vikings did come over here to the Americas, you know, but for a long time, it's no, man, that never happened.
Yeah, no, you're right. I start to see things, and Rich is a big fan of all that Viking history, where I remember, 20 years ago or so, it seemed like it was a cold no, never happened, move on, it's Easter Bunny. And now you seem to hear more academia saying, oh, well, maybe they were in Nova Scotia. Maybe they did make it to Canada. Like they're starting to relent. Now, are they finding more evidence? Did they have the evidence and they're just now starting to share it for whatever reason? It's really strange. Why would they cover that up? Like, what's the benefit that I'm not? Yeah, like I'm saying, but there must be a reason that they would feel necessary to hide this stuff. You think it's out of fear or out of
it makes zero sense to me, and I've had explained to me that it's manifest destiny, that legally, through country laws, through whatever, that we could come in here and conquer the Indians and take all the land and do whatever and make them follow our rules because it's for their better. They didn't have a written language. They didn't have, but at one time that stuff was here. There was a written language here. At one time there was something here, and back to the archaeologists, I had a friend tell me that he talked to an archaeologist, and he says, man, what if we found this, this, and this? And the archaeologist told me, if I found anything like that, I would bury it because I do not want to deal with it. I don't want that on my name. That's career suicide for them to try. And you see that happen with twice with that lady when she found the cocaine on the Egyptian mummies. When she came out with her findings, they said, well, this lady's a crackpot. Well, before that, man, she was a top scientist, a top researcher. But as soon as she came out and says, man, here's my findings. Science is science. This is what it is. There's cocaine on these mummies in Egypt. And the only way that they came from was from the Americas. And then another lady finds tobacco on some of these mummies. And the same thing happens to her. They ruin their careers over that. So these archaeologists, they're seeing that. They're not going to put their name on, oh, yeah, man, let's fight this battle. Yep, you got something, man, that's out of place. Let's fight this. They ain't going to do that. And on top of that, there is a lot of fraud. So do they get mixed up with the fraud with the real stuff? So they are in a catch-22 position, So career suicide, and it could be a fake.
Yeah, you've really got, I guess you really have to come with receipts, and you got to make sure that you're 110% that what you're saying is legit, because like you said, they'll ruin you. They'll discredit you, and you'll never get that back again. So I could see how maybe they did find something. They're like, let's just keep it between us.
If I find something, who am I? You're not an accredited archaeologist. You how do we know that you didn't bring it over from Europe or something? And that's true. How do they, But their own people have found things that had to deal with Egyptian stuffs, and they still, dismissed it as a one-off.
Now, to talk about the Egyptians, I want to kind of go to another topic, which I thought I'd never heard of this one before, but you have several videos of people claiming that ancient Egyptians lived and inhabited in the Grand Canyon. And then I started doing a quick Google. I mean, I spent maybe 20 minutes. I did no deep dive. But there's a lot of articles that allude to that. And there's a lot of sections of the Grand Canyon that are off limits, not even for walking, but you can't fly a drone over. Like, it's just off limits. So I wonder, like, is there merit to what they're saying? Like, is there other reasons? Can you give me the breakdown of why we think Egyptians were at the Grand Canyon, and maybe some of the stories that you've heard that lead you to believe that?
So like you say, if you do a search for the Egyptians in the Grand Canyon, there is a plethora of information on that. But the things that are outside of that to kind of lead credence to that. I had a friend one day. He knew I was these hieroglyphs I talked to you about. I started tracking them down, and I found out that they knew that there was 12 others of these scattered throughout the western United States. And I put a lot of time in tracking these down, and I've got it up to there's 39 of these scattered throughout the western United States. There has been some Egyptian artifacts found near some of these hieroglyphs, But I had a friend come up to me, and he's seen, I wrote some articles on these mystery glyphs, and he says, man, I found some strange symbols. We was down to Lake Powell. We had a houseboat. We went as far up with the houseboat up this draw, as we could get. And then we parked and spent the night there, and then got up in the morning and we went on a family hike, and we found these symbols. What do you think this is, man? And I looked at them symbols, and man, they look like 12th dynasty Egyptian to me. Now, are they really 12th dynasty Egyptian, or did some Egyptologist go there to Lake Powell and spent the time and he got bored, so he just wrote this panel down in there? Maybe it says in Egyptian hieroglyphs that, hey man, me and my family came here and had a great time. But there is a lot. It took somebody a long time to carve these in. There are a lot. It's not just 1, 2, 3. It's a bunch of symbols, and they're just like the Egyptians, going left to right or down, top to bottom, down, and they're neatly carved in. Well, I've been trying to track them down, and because I want to get a picture of them, and I'm thinking to myself also that Lake Powell is built by a dam that dams up the Colorado River, which flows through the Grand Canyon. So I'm thinking to myself, man, if the Grand Canyon story is true, why can't there be other things like that farther on down? So I've spent some time down there looking for it. By the time he told me about this, it was 10 years later, and the lake had dropped 100 feet. Well, 100 feet straight down, when you're talking an angle that goes 20 degrees, 10, 20 degrees, is miles, and the only way there is by boat. And to try and search and scour for this area, I haven't had luck. But one time I was doing some research, and there was a lady who found the exact same type of hieroglyphs, Egyptian type hieroglyphs, 30 miles away from where we're looking at, but the same thing. So I think, well, that's interesting. But then I think, are there proof that the Egyptians were here? So when I was tracking down the mystery glyphs, and I started finding that there was Egyptian things was found near some of these. And so in Pocatello, there was a set found, and I found out that this lady in 1918 found this rock that was carved in the shape of a chicken egg, the size and the shape of a chicken egg. And she was a little girl when she found it in 1918. It had some markings on it. And these markings, they just thought was Indian markings. They didn't think anything of it. This girl kept it all her life, and then when she got older, she had terminal cancer, and then she was dying. And her great granddaughter came over, and she was rummaging through her things, and she found that rock, and she gave it to the great granddaughter. The great granddaughter kept it all her life because it was something neat that her great grandmother gave to her before she passed away. And when King Tut's was making its exhibit, the tomb was making its rounds. The exhibit was making its rounds through the United States. The Smithsonian Magazine did an article on that in their magazine, and she was in the dentist office in the 70s, and she was reading that, and she got looking that there was some markings on King Tut's sarcophagus that was the same markings that was on this egg that her grandma had given her. So she took it to the University of Berkeley, and she showed them, and they authenticated that it was a piece of alabaster that came from Egypt, and it had King Tut's high priest signature on one side and the cartouche of his name on the other. And now how did something like that was found in 1918? They never even really knew who King Tut was. They never broke into his tomb until 1922. How did that get here? Before they even knew, well, the professor that was doing the study on this says, man, we'd like to buy that from you. And as soon as she says, no, I'm not selling this thing, all the information shut up, it was done, but there was another site near Durango, Colorado, where these mystery glyphs are. And I had a guy contact me, and I thought he was showing me where he knew another one of these sets of mystery glyphs was. But when I got and talked to him, he'd found when he was 5 years old in, I think, 1954 it was, where he lived in the mountains, there was a small, a big round knoll, and there was a depression in that knoll, and he hiked up there and he found this rock that was carved to look like an Egyptian scarab, and it had Egyptian hieroglyphs on it. So when he showed me that, I got photos of it, and I started sending photos to some Egyptian antiquities dealers. And they says, man, this looks good. This looks like it would belong to some, it's a magician's amulet. It's not perfect like a priest or somebody would do, but it's something, we've seen this type of thing before, and it had Tutmosis III's name on there,
Oh.
and so there has been Egyptian things found, not a lot, because you get a group of Vikings coming over here or a group of Egyptians coming over here, their stuff is going to be where they can't, and they're not going to leave a lot of stuff around. There's not going to be a lot of stuff found, so to think that you're just going to find it widespread, like from the colonial times or that's not the case. It's just going to be a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
It's going to be a one-off.
Yeah, it's a handful. I'm going to pause real fast, Doug, because I just saw Ken King come in, DK, our buddies in the chat, and a thought popped in my head that this week on Netflix is a show about the Forrest Fenn treasure. Remember that big Forrest Fenn treasure?
Yes.
All over the news a few years ago.
Yes.
It was like a 3-part miniseries on Netflix that went over the story, the whole thing. It was really good. But during the show, I think it was like episode 2, as they were talking about like some of the YouTubers that covered it, they showed a few seconds of not only Ken King's channel, but probably about a good 10 seconds of your channel, Terry. I don't even know if you knew that you were sort of indirectly a small part of that Netflix feature.
Somebody told me that, and Ken King, man, he's a great guy. I like him. I got to meet him in person in Colorado, man, and he's a great guy.
No, he is a good guy. Well, congrats. You both share that in common. You both made the Netflix show. I don't even know if Ken knew. I'm assuming he probably did, but I thought it was really cool. Now back to the Grand Canyon. The video that I saw, which was like a good 25-minute interview with a guy that paraglided over the Grand Canyon, probably illegally.
It was illegal.
Yeah, probably.
It was. It's not a probably. It was.
Yeah, it was. But can you tell us on some of the things, because he said so much, some of the things that he said he saw, because he was such a compelling storyteller that, that was the first video I've seen of this whole thing. I'd never heard of it. That was the first one I saw of yours. So for someone who didn't even think that was even a possibility, near the end, he was so descriptive. I was a believer. I was like, there must be something to this. How did you even hear about that guy for you to do an interview with him?
So every year I put on a kind of a treasure hunter, Bigfoot UFO rendezvous. I'm not a Bigfoot guy. I'm not a UFO guy, but some of my partners are. And that activity is strong here in Utah. We've got Skinwalker Ranch, we got Blind Frog Ranch, we got, Bigfoot sightings. I don't want nothing to do with UFOs.
Aliens? You get a lot of aliens too?
Yeah, I don't want nothing to do with that stuff. I don't want to meet up with Bigfoot, and I don't want to meet up with an alien. If it's but I put on every year. I call it the Moon Lake Gathering. We have people coming in from all over the country. It's free to everybody. So he came to our gathering last year, and there's some incredible stories that you get to hear at this thing. We bring in speakers and things like that to draw people in, but the big treasure, the real treasure, is hearing what the stories of the people come from all over the country, because there's some incredible stories, and last year I told people, I says, if you're shy, if you don't want to go up and talk to somebody, if you see a group of 2, 3, 4 people standing around, just go up and eavesdrop. Just see what they have to say. Last year, I had a lady come up to me and she says, Terry, man, I did what you said, man, and it was incredible. I says, what did I say? She says, you said if I see 3 or 4 people standing around in a circle talking, man, just go eavesdrop. And I did. She says, I heard the most incredible stories I would have never heard any other way, you know? Yeah. And that's the real treasure to me, you know, is the people you get to meet, the stories you get to hear, the occasional artifacts you get to see. That's the real treasure. Anything else is just icing on the cake.
I agree. I mean, when you were interviewing that guy, I felt like I was eavesdropping, and just the way he told the story and described it and said what he saw, it was fascinating. And I tend to believe him. Now, whether or not, you know, without a tangible proof, you never know. But I believe that he truly believed everything he was explaining to me. So I just have to try to reprogram myself, you know?
So yeah, that's the only thing you can do when you hear some of these incredible stories. You just got to say to yourself, do I believe he believes it?
Yeah.
Because, you know, and a lot of them, you know, I think he believes it. Now whether he was on drugs or had a great trip or something,
I didn't get the impression
that you know, you don't know, but I believe, you know, some of these guys, I believe that they believe it, you know, so.
Why do you think areas of the Grand Canyon are off limits? I mean, even for drones and flyovers and things like that, do you think it has something to stem with some of these ancient theories, or do you think it's more of just like a practical, this part of the canyon's dangerous kind of a thing?
Well, that's what they try to tell you. It was dangerous.
That's the easy answer.
That's the easy answer. But you know, there was so much information that came out about that. First, it was Powell. Who floated down the Grand Grand Canyon and the Colorado, the Grand River, the Grand Canyon, and found this stuff. And he went back and reported it. And then they sent another expedition in, and they went in and explored it, man. And they found these massive catacombs with, they don't say Egyptian, they say Egyptian-like, Oriental, Egyptian. Golden statues, you know, living quarter. They said it could have housed 50,000 people in there. And that sounds unbelievable, you know, but then you have stories. You know, I had this older couple that they thought, well, if this is true, there ought to be some evidence. If there was 50,000 people there, they ought to be some evidences. You should be able to see something. And they started finding things, and they started asking questions. And pretty soon, man, these black SUVs started falling around. And
Men in Black stuff, Dougie.
Black stuff, you know, and different things like that. You know, I talked to another couple. They was on the rim above where this is supposed to be, and this is an no-fly zone. A helicopter comes and hovers above them, and just stays there, and it blew their tent over the edge. And then everything, all their pictures, everything that was on their computer they had with them got wiped clean. I'm
seeing in the chat, and I don't know if this is true, but I was thinking as you were talking, maybe I would look at Google Earth and try to zoom into some of these areas. But our friend the Bandit's saying on Google Earth, the restricted areas are blurred out. Yeah, I mean, that's almost proof that they're hiding something.
Why?
Right?
You know, it makes zero sense. Why? Yeah. You know?
Now, I'll have to look at that later. I don't know.
I have another friend, man, that had friends with somebody high up in the government, top secret clearances, and he funneled him some of the pictures and some of the things that came out of the Grand Canyon. There was some incredible things that was found in there. There was this, they said that they built a rail line into there and hauled everything out, but they still keep it. Why? What? I don't know why they don't want us to know. It makes zero sense to me, but it makes a great story.
Well, it does. And I mean, you know, who knows? It's so many interesting things could have happened. I mean, you've probably heard that. I mean, I think it's proven now that those Chinese terracotta soldiers, Doug, where there's like 10,000 of these life-size terracotta soldiers they found underground in the cave. If I would have told you that before scientists said, here they are, here's the evidence, you would have thought I was a crackpot. If I said, there's 10,000 full size terracotta soldiers. And then once it came out, well, now it's like common knowledge. It could be the same sort of thing, that for whatever reason, this information isn't getting out there. And maybe when it does, it could snowball, and we'll start getting the whole story.
Yeah, the government will keep those things suppressed until they figure that it's not damaging in any way to release that information. But if they feel there's any controversy or something that could develop negatively by releasing that information, they're going to keep it quiet. And that's obviously what they do.
Yeah, it is. There was a question. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Terry.
I'm just going to say, what does it matter? Why? But there must be some high level reason why it matters. I don't know. Maybe if they admit that the Egyptians were here or something, that maybe Egypt's got some claim to us or something.
Yeah,
That makes no sense to me, man. Battles were fought and won, and conquerors rule the territory they're in. What does it matter? I don't know.
Yeah. There was a question earlier about, and I think they're out in your area, the what the heck were the name of the Lost Dutchman mines out there?
That's in Arizona.
Yeah, what do you know about that? Because I know that's pretty mysterious out where we are, and that's right in your neck of the woods.
So I got invited to go down there to the Dutch hunters rendezvous. Those guys put on a rendezvous for the Dutch hunters every year, and it's a blast, man. There's a lot of great guys down there, Wayne Tunnell and Woody Wampler and can't think of their names, but they're, man, if you get a chance to go down to their rendezvous, man, it's a great time. But I don't know that much about it, just a little bit, but I do know a guy that his grandmother had all kinds of mishaps happen to her. One of her kids died. 2 of her husbands died. She worked at the Indian school there for the Apaches and some kind of a cook or doing something. And one of the Apache women felt sorry for her. This is in the early 20s. This like 1921. And so she took her because she lost 2 of her husbands, one or 2 of her kids, took her and showed her where the Apaches was getting gold. And went up there. She was getting some gold out of this place, and it's not very far from where Adolf Ruth. He was shot in like 20. I don't know my Lost Dutchman treasure hunters information because I don't go. I know some of the stories, but I don't really search at it. I know them guys, and they're great at that. But anyways, she was getting some gold. And but then she got remarried, and her husband moved her to California. When she got remarried. But there's a lot of great stories, and it's called the Killer Mountains, man. There's a lot of people end up dead in there.
Superstition Mountains. Yeah.
And we have the same thing here in the Uinta Mountains. You just don't hear it like you do the superstitions, but we have a lot of people that come in and they end up dead. We had just this winter. There's a guy flew in from Finland to Salt Lake City, grabbed a cab, paid him $500 to take him up to the Moon Lake Lodge up there. The Moon Lake Lodge is closed. It's snow up there. It's still snowing. He was ill prepared, and he went into the Uinta Mountains looking for Spanish gold, I guess, and nobody's heard from him since. This is back in February, and wow. His parents. He told his parents he was going exploring, and they figured that he was just going to explore at their cabin in Finland. And when they started they never heard from him. They went up the cabin. He wasn't there. They started checking his computers. They started checking credit card receipts and found they had no clue he was coming to America, but nobody's found him. They put out a few search parties, but the snow is so deep, and so he's still out there missing somewhere, and someday somebody will find his body.
Wow. Yeah, hopefully.
Now, Terry, have you ever had the good fortune to find any of these caves with the hieroglyphics yourself personally, or are you relying strictly on the others that have seen these things and taken pictures or whatever?
So I'm relying on others, but I did find these hieroglyphs I'm talking about. I call them the mystery glyphs. I did find them, and that took me on the track to track all these people down. They wasn't widely known about all this information, and it was, anyways. Yeah, I haven't found any gold bars myself. I've found cool things. I've had my heart pounding a lot, but it always wasn't the gold bars what I was looking for.
Have you talked to anybody that they said that they were specifically in one of these caves where the Egyptians may have been, that maybe had more markings on the wall, like they actually witnessed it firsthand? Have you had any of those firsthand accounts where they really thought they had the proof that they were at the actual place?
One story of a guy that claimed that he broke into a catacomb that had Egyptian artifacts in it, but it also, he said, had a lot of other artifacts in it. Knights Templar stuff, a lot of stuff. And again, I listened to their story and I believe that he believes it.
Right.
And so he tells a compelling story. Is that true? I don't know, but I believe that he believes it. Another guy who broke into a cavern that had giants in it. And
I would love to see some giant bones, Doug. That's my new thing this year.
You and me both.
My New Year's resolution, Terry. I want to see giant bones. We're gonna have a lot of looking to do there, Doug. We don't get a lot of those at these.
How about Spanish? Any Spanish relics you personally may have found, a breastplate or helmet or anything of that nature?
I haven't found a breastplate or a helmet. I did find a spur. I think it's Spanish, but I'm not 100% sure. I've seen Spanish artifacts that has been found. Can I prove that it was found? No, but I have seen it, and I believe the people that told me. I take that back. I back on my Spanish treasure hunting days, I found this old tree. It was an old pine tree that was dead, but it was still standing. And it had some markings on it, Spanish markings on it. And one side was just 21 slashes going down the tree, higher than I could reach. So they had to been on a horse to start that. And then the back was some markings that I felt was Spanish. And I thought, well, this means that 21 Veras, I got to go this direction. And so I figured out what I thought 21 Veras was, and it took me onto a hillside, and there was a big boulder there. It was big, but with a lot of work, I could have moved it, and so I did. I needed help. I got my brother to help me. Man, we dug a hole under it. Man, we'd got a big log. Man, we pried up a little bit, throw rocks under it, and pried up more, and got it to roll off. And I thought, that means that. I figured that it meant that there was some Spanish gold bars under this big rock, and so got the boulder moved. I put my detector underneath where that boulder was, and it started beeping like crazy, and my heart's going on. I thought, man, I've found it. And I dig down a little bit, man, and I start finding old square nails. And I'm going, what's going on with this? Why old square nails? On this hillside under this boulder? That makes zero sense, And so I went up a little bit higher and dug down to the same level and started hitting burnt wood and more square nails. And then I went down lower to where it flattened out, and then I could see it. I could see a row of rocks just barely sticking out of the ground, and it goes back into, and I could see that it was a fairly large building that was cut into that hillside. And so I started detecting down where it was lower. I found the inside clapper to a bell. I found an iron arrowhead. I found the hammer to a flintlock gun. I found a couple round balls. So what I think was that was a Spanish mission there. I think the Indians attacked him, drove him out, and then I think they obliterated that thing. They filled the dugout part of it back in, rolled some rocks in it to make it look natural, so you couldn't tell that there was anything there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Doug, you've seen on the internet those mounds that people would see that they think are overgrown pyramids or structures that are just, naturally occurring. People are starting to use the LiDAR and try to investigate, but I'm sure that'll have the kibosh put on it soon. And I looked up that archaeologist. I found her here. Her name is Dr. Denny Seymour. She's in Colorado, and she's claiming that she's found I'm just paraphrasing. I have to read the whole article again. The oldest firearms ever found on U.S. soil, that's proving that the Spanish were much further north than we ever thought. Go read about it. Dr. Denny Seymour. I'm trying to get her to come on the show as a future guest, but she's found some incredible discoveries. And how I got involved slightly is that she's been working with metal detectors and other metal detectorists. And that's kind of how the story hit my ears. But if you're not familiar, look her up. She might be on the good side, Terry, trying to prove the unprovable.
She'll be met with career suicide. That's what'll happen to her.
Well, she's got to come with receipts.
Good for her, man. I'm starting to like her already.
Yeah, she's got to come with receipts.
So, Terry, you mentioned you used your metal detector in this particular incidents. Do you frequently get to use a metal detector in your researching, and you pinpoint an area you think is worthy of a real good hunt? Do you get out and detect it?
I use a metal detector all the time. Not as much as you guys do, but I use one all the time, man. That's the best thing we got to X-ray, to see into the ground,
Yeah.
And more I'll use a 2 box, because it doesn't find the little stuff. I'm looking for big gold bars, and it'll go
Sure.
And out here, you guys probably got the same, but out here, man, everybody used to, it's not as much as it used to, but there was a lot of hunters that would go out hunting season, and so, man, I find a ton of lead and bullet brass, like finding pull tabs, it's the same thing, know. And so I use a 2 box to cut out on all that, because I'm not searching an area that's an old homestead, or I'm up in the mountains where there's nothing there. I'm looking for evidence that there was something there.
Right.
Out of all the people at your gathering, how many people do you get to come out at your gatherings? Is that a yearly thing?
Yeah, it's a yearly thing. I don't know how much longer we're going to do it, because we don't make a dime out of this. We got to pay our way there and pay our food and pay our lodging, just like everybody else. This is just a way for me to help give back to the community. But more than anything, it's just a place for people can come and meet each other, from all across the country. And so I think the highest we've had is 700 people. I think last year we had 500 people.
And you can't get those 100 people to raise enough money to collectively to keep it going?
Well, so it's not that. We this costs us money, and if people give us donations, and we tell people, if you can't afford to give a donation, then don't. But just come and have a good time, Right. If you can afford to give a donation, man, thank you. We need the donation. So we get enough donations to keep it going. But we don't take a dime of it. We always take what we have left over to roll in to get the next year going. It's just a lot of work to put these things
I'm sure.
A lot of work, trying to line up the speakers, trying to line up, it's just a lot of work. And I think, man, is it really worth it? But then when I hear that lady, that come up to me last year and say, man, I had the greatest time. I'll never miss another. Yeah. That makes it worth it.
That's the payoff. That's the payoff.
Is the payoff. And to me, man, that's the biggest payoff as you can get.
Well, let's assume that you may do it again. Hopefully. When do you typically have it, and where could people look it up if they wanted to come out and join you?
So Teresa just put it up, I believe.
She did, but I wanted Terry. I wanted Terry to say.
So this year, man, we used to have it. Man, this has been going on for 26 years now. It used to be just small, and we had it at a small first private campground that some people had, and we'd get 100 people or so, you know. And I wasn't really involved. I just go to it. But then we outgrew where we had it, so we went to have it up to Moon Lake in the Uinta Mountains because we thought, well, this would be a perfect setting because, you know, it's right where all the major drainages happen, comes down into that area where a lot of Spanish activity took place, you know, so it'd be a perfect setting. Well, the Forest Service got wind of that, and they put the kibosh on that. Says you're going to have way too many, so we had to move it down. The city of Altamont says, hey man, come and use our park. So we've used that, and we've done that, and that's been great, but we've kind of outgrown it, and plus that's outdoors. And you know, it gets too hot. It'll rain. The wind will blow. You know, we can't control the weather, and it's always terrified me. What do we do if all these people are coming in from across the country, and then we have a week of solid rain? You know, that's always terrified me. So this year, man, the Duchesne Event Center has given us. It's given us their venue. It's a great event center. You know, we'll hold 2,000 people, and man, it's got all the media things where the presenters can show their slides and do it. Man, this is going to be a great one this year, and they give it for us cheaper than what it cost us for the porta potties last year. So, man, they did us a solid on that. You know, and so, you know, we'll see how this year's goes, but I think, man, this year's going to be legendary.
All right. Well, listen, Teresa did put a link up in there. It sounds really interesting. And like I said, to go to hear all these stories, I'm sure you've heard millions of them. Is there any one story, Terry, where if you could pack up tomorrow morning and go explore the best, most intriguing story you've ever heard, and you could go there paid for, which one would you want to go check out that you just thought, man, I got to dive into this. There's meat on this bone. So
there's a couple of them, but first, the Moon Lake Gatherings, August 14th, 15th, and 16th.
Thank you.
In Duchesne, Utah. But, you know, I heard a story, and the guy, I believe he believes the story. He found a KGC treasure. He spent a lot of time searching for this, and he found a KGC treasure, which was a pot of gold coins. But with that pot of gold coin was a map to another treasure.
Really?
And so it took him a while, but he figured out where that was. And you gotta understand some of these people, their tenacity, their willingness to keep going, to do what it takes to, you know, they're the people that find stuff. So the people that just get started and dig a 10-foot hole and quit, or, you know, of course, if you dig a 10-foot hole and there's nothing there, man, you wasted a lot of time. But he believed so much, man, he dug a shaft 30 feet down and broke into a cavern that was filled with Knights Templar artifacts, stacks and stacks of gold and silver bars, Egyptian artifacts, KGC artifacts, Aztec artifacts. I mean, the story he tells is incredible. If that's real, I would really love to see that.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And like I say, you know, he tells a story that I think he believes it, you know.
Well, he's claiming that he actually found this stuff.
He found it. He broke into it and found it.
Did he show up at the Moon Gathering in a stretch limo?
He is dirt poor. He will not sell it. He will not loot it. He will not sell it. He won't, you know. But he did. He did take a silver bar out. He said it was silver, and it's probably what he claims. It's the size of a torso, and he says that they had holes in it, and they'd put a leather strap around it, and that's how they carried it, one on their back and one on their front. That's how they hauled that. And he says, man, this cavern system is clear full of them.
So did he claim that he already emptied that cavern out, or is
No,
he
he's-
continuously going back and retrieving more?
No, he's not taking nothing out, but he did take this one.
Oh, he's leaving it all in there.
He's not touching any of it. He's afraid it'll get into the wrong hands. He's afraid.
Wow.
You know, So anyways, he did take this silver bar out, you know, and so he brought it to the Moon Lake Gathering, and so we had an XRF gun there, and he wanted to do this live in front of everybody to show that it was a silver bar, and so. And we says, man, let's test this before we do this live. He says, nope. I want everybody to know, man. I'm honest. You know, whatever it is what it is. You know, he thought it was silver, so we put the XRF gun on it, and it turned out to be zinc.
Oh, it was all zinc.
It was zinc. So that kind of deflated him. He found a cavern with zinc and he thinks gold bars and all this other artifacts, you know, ossuaries and all kinds of statues. He says there was a golden statue.
Wow.
So he was pretty deflated about that, but he was still, you know, I found this stuff. Well, later I talked to a guy who they created a process where they can 10x your ore. If you got X amount of ounces per ton, he could 10 times that with their new process. And they was testing it out and doing things. And they wanted to have some tests done with some other people that was running some ore samples for them. And so they had some ore that they had, and then they took an old silver dollar and they melted it down, and they gave the two samples to this refinery or to this assayer, and the one came back as zinc. They knew it was a silver dollar, but it came back as zinc. And so what happens is the zinc, man, floats to the top on that, and those XRF guns, they will only read just the top portion of it. It won't read what's down underneath. So this guy still could have silver, but it just had zinc in it, and all rest ran to the top.
Gotcha. Oh, I see what you're saying. So it only read the top micron layer.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. There was a question I saw that came over. It said, I thought it was interesting. I'll pose it to the chat also, Doug. Is if you could find a cave full of gold and silver and treasure like you're explaining, but it meant that you could never tell another soul that you found it, would you do it?
So
you'd have to that secret would have to die with you.
Here's the deal. Here's the deal. As soon as you tell one person, it's not a secret anymore.
You can't tell
and
anybody.
There's been a lot of people ended up dead over talking.
Yeah.
So you tell one person.
Yeah, not even your wife, not your kid, no one.
One person. As soon as you tell one person, it's no longer a secret. And there is so many stories that people have been tortured, but there's so many stories of people ending up dead because they found something and they told somebody. And now the bad guys come in, or now they're bothered. Everybody wants to part of it, you know.
Well, hey, in the chat too, would you guys, if you could find a cave filled with gold, but you could never tell another soul, not even your mom, your wife, your husband, your kids, no one ever, would you do it? Or would that secret consume you too much and you'd rather not bother? I thought it was kind of interesting. I know, Doug, what would you do, Doug? Would you want the gold, but you couldn't tell anybody?
Yeah, I'd take one coin out at a time, and just enough to live on. And nope, I'll just tell everybody I found it in a farm field.
Just one coin, and then
at a time. At a time.
So you wouldn't really be making out from your incredible treasure that way. You would just be
making a modest living with cashing it in. But
you couldn't live extravagantly. You couldn't. Yeah.
I'm not an extravagant guy to begin with. So, all I need is my bills paid and a comfortable car to drive around in.
All right.
That happened to Willie Doffett, aka Lawrence Foreman. You know, he found a huge treasure in the Caballo Mountains in New Mexico.
Yeah.
And I ended up with Dr. Orange Swearingen's, all his research, all his all his videotapes, all his interviews, and that one of the persons that he interviewed was Lawrence Foreman, Willie Doffett. He found a cavern full of Spanish gold bars, and he pulled them out, man, and started showing them off, man. And he got kidnapped, he got tortured, he got, the story goes, man, it wasn't a good story. A lot of people ended up dead over that.
Yeah.
When you start incorporating a lot of money, bad things happen. You hear the stories, even the people, Doug, that win the lottery. Every cousin and uncle comes out of the woodwork, and
even relatives you never had.
Yeah, and before you know it, you're poorer than before you won the lottery.
Yep.
So somebody just said that's why everybody tells on their deathbed. There's a lot of stories told on people's deathbeds. A lot about a lot of different things. Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, you finally get it off your chest because if you tell anybody, it's going to, make life difficult for you and your family. It's one of those weird. Doug, I'm not going to get into what it is too much, but several years ago, Terry, I found something with my detector that's worth, a good amount of money, a lot of money. And Doug knows about it. No one really knows about it, but I'll never put that video out or talk about it because I don't want people to know, because it's too much. It's too extravagant. So I just threw it back in the farm.
Yeah.
No, I didn't do that, but I know what you mean. It's scary.
In Fort Knox.
Back to the deathbed stories and stuff like that. I back in the late 80s, early 90s, I used to sell and rent metal detectors, prospecting equipment, and it was when cell phones just coming out, and I had it. It wasn't the big brick ones, but they was still pretty big. I had a cell phone, and I was going into the driver's license division to get my driver's license renewed. And the guy behind the desk says, "What are you doing with a cell phone?" I had it in case. Anyways, I says, "Well, I sell and rent metal detectors in case somebody wants to get a hold of me or something." And he says, "Well, let me tell you a treasure story." His dad on his deathbed says, "Man, I buried a can of gold coins and out underneath the tree, and then he died." He says, "We live on an orchard." What tree?
That's what Doug lives for. Doug lives for that story.
We've heard that same story almost every farm we're on.
How many places we've done where the guy said, "Oh yeah, the old guy that lived here buried his things," and Doug's on a mission, and we've never found that thing.
Hey, I got one for you. Back in the early 80s, my brother comes over to my house, man, and he's got all these guns and 2 Stradivarius violins and all these old stocks and bonds. And where did he get all this? Well, there was some guy that passed away, and he was royalty, family to royalty over I don't know what country, but he came over to here to live, and he had all this stuff. Well, when he passed away, the family, he was good friends with my friends, my brother's boy's dad. And the family wanted him to go and get all this stuff and send him back to whatever country it was. Man, he had a rifle or a gun that was worth 80 grand. This was back in the 80s, that was given to him by the King of England or something. So they're going in and looking for this stuff, and they're not finding anything. And so finally they notice, man, that the carpet in the bedroom upstairs isn't tacked down, so they lift up the carpet, man, and they see, man, that there's saw cuts on all the joists. And so they grab this, and he had all the joist boards tied to a piece of tin, and they pull it back, and man, there's all these guns stuffed underneath in the rafters, and then they're going around looking for other stuffs, and they find behind the kitchen, one of the kitchen cabinets, man, they find it's a got a trap door to go underneath the house, and down in they start finding all these old mining stocks and bonds and stuff like that. They find 2 Stradivarius violins, but the family said, man, he had a bunch of gold and silver, so they're looking for this stuff. So they called me in with my metal detector, to start see if we can't find it. So I'm scanning the walls of this house, see if he's got anything in the walls. And I hit this area, man, that's about like this, that's going crazy, So I says, well, man, let me get a nail, poke a little hole down here, and we'll tap it, see what we can find, see if man, they didn't wait for me. They got the Sawzall out. They started, man, the lath and plaster. And at the same time, man, the realtor shows up bringing people, man, to look at the buy, man. And we're tearing it down with it. And it turned out to be, man, that they stuck on a piece of tin in with a sticker on lath and plaster, But never ever did find them gold coins or gold or silver coins or anything. But they found a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stop calling Dad. He's on
What's that?
a video.
Judy.
Oh,
I guess he forgot to put it on.
it's Charlie. Didn't you, as a kid, find a big stash of like Civil War guns in the attic of
Yes. Yes, I did. Yeah. Well, my friend and I, yes.
What was
in
that
the
story?
Old church, where they had the come out swinging event this year.
Uh-huh.
And that's where George Washington's troops were. Well, that church that's nearby, that's where the encampment was. And up in the crawl space, they found, this boy and I, some guns from the encampment.
You found them personally, though, right?
Well, my buddy found it, and I went there to investigate the same day. He called me up, and we investigated it. And then, of course, the minister that was there, they called up Valley Forge, and they came up and picked up the guns.
Did you ever see him again?
No.
Do you know what happened to him?
Are they
Well, I
on
probably
display
have
at Valley
seen-
Forge?
I probably have seen them. They're probably in the museum there. Sure.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you think that they didn't just disappear and
No.
someone?
No,
Okay.
no, that was a great find.
We'll have to go to Valley Forge and check it out.
There you go.
Here's a question, Doug, and I think I might have a different answer than Doug, and I'm curious what Terry's answer would be. I'm going to try to read it over here. I wrote it down earlier.
Yeah, I'm upstairs.
All right, Terry, if you had an option, these are your 2 scenarios. You could either A, you discover a hidden cave full of gold and silver and all sorts of treasure, or you can personally find undeniable proof that giants walked the earth with real bones laid out in the cave that maybe has no monetary value to you. What do you rather find, the riches or the historical proof to change the world?
I think the historical proof to change the world. If you found something like that cave of gold, that'd be cool. But man, your life would be turned upside down.
You'd have to do what Doug does and spend $1.
I would love to find a cavern full of gold bars. I'm looking for a cavern full of gold bars. But if I got to choose one or the other, God, that'd be tough. I'd want the gold bars too, but I really want to know what the true history is.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, Terry, why do you think the government or the authorities, whoever it might be, suppress this kind of information? What is their reasoning for keeping this so quiet?
I'm baffled. It makes no sense to me. I'm sure there's a big, great answer to that, but it makes no sense to me. It sounds absolutely crazy. Why would they care if there's giants? Why would they care if there's proof the Egyptians was over here, if the proof the Vikings were over here? Why would they care? Other than it makes zero sense to me.
There's a funny comment, Doug. Treadwell Taxi says, "I'll take the treasure, and then I'll buy the bones." I didn't think about that.
That's a tough question. Obviously, I'd love to have some gold bars, but I'm not going to tell you guys that.
Right.
How old are you, Terry? How long have you been doing this?
I used to think I was old enough to be your dad, but you told me I'm not, man. I'm 68 years old. I started.
You're a kid.
I started treasure hunting in 1981. So.
Yeah. No, that's exciting. What was your best treasure you've ever found personally, whether it was monetary or just it filled your with excitement? What was your best discovery in your years of treasure hunting?
My best, I just found some random things. You guys probably found a lot better things than
Well,
me.
whatever got you the most excited.
But,
You don't have to compare it to.
my very first diamond ring I found. I went to I seen some of them shows of the sunken Spanish galleons, man, and I was gonna find me one. I got me underwater metal detector.
Not in Utah, you're not.
I went to Cozumel and scuba diving, and I took my underwater detector with me. And man, I was going to find me a sunken Spanish galleon somehow, and I take it out, and the diver master says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! You can't bring that on this boat, man. This is a national park area. You can't have this here." So I never got to use it. So our last day, our last night, we flew in from Cozumel over to Cancun, and my cousin says, "Hey, man, let's take that out on the beach, see what we can find." The very first thing I found was a 1-carat diamond ring. That was the very first ring I ever found, and that excited me.
Sure.
Another one, was the one I found, that iron arrowhead, the hammer to the gun, the inside clapper to a bell. That was pretty cool. Another one was we was doing research on we was looking for an old train robbery. They took $60,000 in gold coins and took it up and buried it and hid it at a cabin somewhere. We found old documents where there was an old cabin in this area. That was on the surveyor's remarks on some lines. So we triangulated, found where that was at and went to it. You couldn't tell really that there was a cabin there. You wouldn't have been able to tell. After we was there, then we could kind of see there was. Near an old spring. Man, I found an 1857 half dollar in the middle of nowhere.
I thought you were going to say Flying Eagle penny. Would I gave Doug a heart attack right here on the show?
So that I found a lot of cool things like that, but nothing. I would love to find a gold coin. I've never found a gold coin.
Yeah.
I would really love
Terry.
to find a Spanish gold bar. I've never found a Spanish gold bar yet.
Oh,
Hey, Terry, did you ever hear about recently now the Kentucky gold that they found? A farmer found.
I heard that, Tart. Yeah, did you hear that
Kentucky
story?
Gold.
I think I did. Yeah.
400, I think it was 400 gold coins or more in his field, in his farm field.
Yeah. I saw it on the news, and the guy's like, obviously the story got out, and now he's trying to put the genie back in the bottle, because you don't want everyone and their mother showing up at your field.
And to be honest with you, I think there's more gold to be found, not particularly at that farmer's field, but more gold that's buried around that will be found someday, again.
Well, you got to think, the depression and the tax collectors and all that, people buried their money. They didn't trust the banks anymore. They didn't trust, they didn't trust banks security boxes. They didn't trust because they lost everything in there, and so a lot of stuff got buried, and a lot
of stuff got buried.
Yeah, and where is that? Who knows? They passed away, and the kids never knew. I bought 2 gold coins from a guy who he bought an old house, and he found kind of a hidden closet and a hidden room, a hidden door in a closet. Opened it up, and there was a padlock on another door. He cut the padlock, opened up, and then there was just a metal box, and he opens it up there, and there's all these prescription bottles in there, and he thought, man, somebody's keeping their prescriptions away from their kids so they don't steal their prescriptions, drugs from them. Well, he gets it, he starts picking them up, and it's heavy, and he opens up one clear full of $2 gold coins.
Wow.
So, stuff like that's still being found, and you just never know. Here's a guarantee: if you're not out looking, you will never find nothing.
Yeah, that's right.
That's true.
And you never know what you'll find, and at the very least, you'll have a great time. You'll meet great people. You'll have some great conversation, and if you happen to find some great stuff, that's just icing on the cake.
Yeah, no, I agree. We get a lot of tours of some of these old properties we do inside the house too, which is always cool. And even though these houses are 1700s oftentimes, and Doug, if you remember, there was one. I think Charlie was there. It was before we met Rich. We were inside the house. It was abandoned. We were walking around, and I came down from the second floor. I was holding onto the banister, and I got to the bottom, and the top of the banister, the ball wiggled a little bit in my hand, and I thought, oh, that's kind of weird. So I pulled on it, and the top ball of the banister came off, and I shined my flashlight. That banister bottom rail was hollowed out. Now there was nothing in there, but I guarantee that at one time there probably was. That was a hiding spot for maybe valuables from the British or whatever, under the stairs, like you said, behind the walls.
Yeah.
I do think that, and if that family died or the person that made this cavity in the house died, maybe the younger generation of that family had no idea. And it sits inside this house, hidden in some cavity, maybe never to be found ever again.
And I guarantee you, there's been a lot of stuff found from remodeling of these old homes.
Yes.
We'll never hear about. We'll never, ever hear about. It was kept quiet.
I tell all the property owners, I say, if you ever get this room remodeled, it's got plaster walls. I say, if you ever get it remodeled, don't let the contractor in here by himself. Be here when he opens that wall up, because you never know. Your house is 300 plus years old. That would have been the optimal hiding spot.
Well, we just did the house. Tim Smith did the modifications in one room, and he was tearing the ceiling down, and old coins were falling out of the ceiling. Nothing valuable. A flying eagle was one, a half penny. But, people stowed things away that they just didn't want to put them in a bank for whatever reason.
I have a friend, man, that he was out in the mountains, out in the area, and he was detecting, and he found an old mason jar, just a small mason jar that had a bunch of coins in it and a piece of paper and a key. And on this piece of paper, it said, Ralph, to the tree, 10 paces, 2 feet down, or something like that, So he goes out and he's looking all over, and he starts detecting around trees and around rocks. And I think he found 4 of these bigger mason jars, clear full of pennies, nickels. There was a couple silver dollars, but the majority of them were Indian head pennies and nickels. And people think, well, that ain't much of a treasure, but man, them old buffalo nickels, the Indian head pennies, back then that was a lot of money to them guys. A penny dust was nothing, But just the rarity of just the antiquity values and stuff like that, is worth some money. But back then, that was a lot of money to them guys, and they squirreled away, all them nickels, all them pennies. And you think, man, why would you squirrel away pennies? That was a lot of money to them back then.
Yeah, during the Great Depression, for sure. Doug, I actually found a treasure map once, Doug, in my witch's jar.
Right.
I found this witch's spell jar, Terry. It was a mason jar, and this witch had written letters in there, had biblical pages, the weirdest stuff. But she drew a map to where she buried other jars around this dais in the woods. And again, the stuff in the jar I found wasn't necessarily monetarily valuable, but I thought, how incredible. Like, I have a map, that I could try to find more and peel off more layers to this story. I thought it was fascinating.
Hey, Jason, didn't Jeff Ford detect around an area where a house was demolished, and they went there and they found coins, and then there was so many coins, silver coins, that they actually got a backhoe in there and started going through the debris and all that stuff.
Yeah,
yes.
The property owner was a stranger, and he talked the guy into letting him bring a backhoe in, and they backhoed his yard. I think they wound up finding, I don't even remember. I'd be making something up. Maybe 5,000 silver coins, something like that.
It's crazy.
Oh, Michael, how I see it. Thank you for the super chat. Hold on. He says, my grandfather went through depression. He had money in books and under his furniture. And when he died, we came across it. No one knew about it. $27,000.
Wow.
That's, yeah, I mean, if
And
you,
they probably missed some.
they
That's
did.
right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
and what probably happens is you come across, you know, a $10 bill hidden in a book and you're like, let me check another book. And if you find another 10, well, guess what, Doug? You're going through every page of every book from every house in the neighborhood looking for more of this hidden treasure from, you know, his grandfather. That's a cool story.
That hoard of silver coins, Wes sent me about 10 of them, and they're all marked in flips, part of that hoard. He also sent me a ring, silver ring made out of one of those silver
They have
coins,
dollars.
which was very nice of him. That's
Yeah.
in my treasure chest.
Gotcha. No, that was cool. But no, that's pretty amazing. Terry, how about, and it's getting late, I'll try not to keep you too much longer. Do you have you heard any really cool treasure type stories that maybe revolved around a historical figure? Like maybe like someone specific, you know, I read some things on like, you know, Billy the Kid would hide his treasure and, you know, left clues for people. Jesse James, like, have you heard any first count stories of notable figures that left behind some sort of a mystery still waiting to be discovered?
You know, around here we had Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid, and the Wild Bunch. You know, and there's stories, and I talked to, and he'll be at our Moon Lake gathering speaking. He's the great grandson of, he's related to Butch Cassidy. Butch Cassidy's sister, it was his grandmother, and when she passed away, he got all her. She emphatically says Butch Cassidy was never killed in Bolivia. He came back here, man, visited me several times. I got letters from him. He got all the family history and all that. He says, I believe that they never got. When they'd robbed something, they didn't have time to take it with them because they was on the move in a hurry. So they'd find a place and bury it and then come back later when the posse wasn't on them, you know? Well, he says, I 100% believe that there's still a lot of that treasure out there buried. You know, some of the guys then they'd divvy the money up. They didn't trust each other, so they'd hide it individually. They wouldn't keep it in their saddlebag where one of their partners could steal it from them. They'd bury it, you know, and then they'd go do the next bank heist or something and end up dead. Well, nobody knows where that's at, you know, and he emphatically says, you know, so there's a lot of treasure stories like that out here, you know. It'd be fun to find one of them. I never have. I've been looking for them.
Yeah, I mean, I would think like out there, you know, you're like, you know, take 10 paces west from the big tree, you know, kind of a thing. Like they had to have some sort of landmark. But who knows if they didn't leave any sort of a clue. That's one of the beauties of metal detecting, Doug, is that, you know, it actually gives us a chance to find these unseen things under the ground with this magical stick that we use. And, you know, whether it's a true treasure or just an intrinsic treasure, that's what makes it exciting, you know. One of my favorite parts of it.
Couple stories, you know, when I used to sell and rent metal detectors and prospecting equipment, I had a lot of people come to me and they would rent a metal detector because they had a story in their family, you know. One was a guy that his I don't remember if it was his grandmother's sister or somehow it was related to him. He was an outlaw. And he robbed banks and got caught, got shot, got caught, was in jail, got doctored up, but he ended up dying. But before he died, he wrote a letter to his sister and told him, hey, man, I got this big stash of gold coins that I've got over in this certain area. And you know, here it is. Well, the sister, because it was ill-gotten loot, she didn't want nothing to do with it, but she kept the letter in the family, and it got passed down to to this guy, and he was going to go after it. I mean, this is a personal family history, a personal, tell him where the location. He never would tell me the location, and I wouldn't tell anybody the location either. But he was renting 2 boxes and trying to find it with Polaroid cameras and trying to find the treasure flares and all that. But he was looking for a relative, a short-tailed relative of his that was an outlaw who buried it. He was looking for that. He wasn't having. He'd found the family. He'd looked for the cabin where he was at, and nobody could ever find it. He finally found the cabin, but the trees that was the marking of where you got to go, the trees were gone. They were no longer there. I had another guy come and rent a 2-box from me for the whole summer, and he never would really tell me what it was, but other than that, if he found something, man, he says he'd treat me right, and he really never would tell me what. Well, I talked to a lot of people, and he'd come back and start showing me these markings on trees. Well, I knew some other people was showing me the exact same markings, so I knew where this guy was at. But anyways, the whole summer came by and come and went, and years later, I had his information from when he would rent from me. I got all his information. And so I called him. I says, man, what was you looking for? What was happening? So he tells me that his uncle had found a huge treasure. He was out deer hunting, scouting for deer, and the ground gave way, and he fell into this cavern. And he goes in there, and there's a beam of light. There's a hole in the up above somehow, because there's a beam of light coming out of the sea, and it lit the whole thing up. He can see old shovels, picks. He says the handles were all rotten off, and he says there's all these walls clear full of bricks. And he's thinking, man, why would somebody stack bricks in here? Neatly stacked. And so he tries to climb out. He's getting ready to climb out, and he's noted one of these bricks is cocked just a little bit. So he goes to straighten it up, and when he slides it, man, this thing's heavy, and he turns it over, man. He picks it up, and this is a gold bar,
Oh, what he thought was a brick was a gold bar.
It was a gold bar, and it had just all the years of the dirt and dust on it and everything like that. And so he says that he puts it in his pocket, and he climbs out, and as he's climbing out, it hit him real strong. He says, man, you're super rich, but you're going to lose everything, your family, everything. And so he put it back, and he climbs out, and he gets going back to his truck. Well, he hides the place up first. He gets going back to his truck, and he thinks that's stupid, man. So he comes back, and it hits him again. You're going to be super rich, but you're going to lose everything, family, everything, And so he doesn't. He leaves, and then a big snowstorm comes in. He doesn't get back to the next year. He's thinking to himself, this is stupid. Why didn't I get some of them gold bars? So he goes back. He can't find it. He's been looking for years for it. Finally, he enlists his nephew, the guy that's renting the 2-box from me. I'm thinking to myself, would you really leave that there?
Yeah.
I'm thinking that. But his nephew came and rented that 2-box from me, took the whole summer off of work, convinced that they're going to find this. Not only, man, he lost his job, they lost his house, his wife divorced him over all this, and the uncle sat there and let him do this for a story that's not real. So I think to myself, man, there's got to be something to this story, And then, anyways, there's a lot of great stories out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be that's one of those weird things, Doug. I can't even imagine walking along and falling through the ground into some cavern where there's just like it just
So
That's right out of Goonies,
How do you even fill that back in? Like when you climb, how do you fill that hole in the roof? What do you do?
That kind of, not the treasure part, but the groundbreaking, that happened to me.
Really?
I was up in the Uinta Mountains, and I seen the treasure symbol, and so I'm going along, and I see there's a game trail. Elk and deer are using this, and there's a little teeny hole about like this, in this depression. And I think, man, that's kind of suspect. So I get a stick, and I stick it in there, man, and it goes all the way. It's a long stick. It goes all the way in there, and there's no bottom to it. So I go back to my truck, and I get a shovel, and I start hitting it, and the whole thing caved in. Woof! And
Did
if
you
I'd have
fall
fell,
in?
I didn't fall in, but if I'd have fallen in, there's no way I could have got out. I mean, it wasn't that far down, but it was undercut underneath so that you couldn't get up to get the ledge to get yourself back up. So I went and got a rope and tied it to a tree, and I go down in there, and I can see that the dirt has fallen in, but there's a crack, and I can see this cavern goes. It takes off and goes, but this crack goes like this, and I can only see this much of it. I can see that I got to dig down quite a ways before it's wide enough that I can get in and I can go.
Right.
So, man, I had to go get some help because I couldn't do this by myself because you got to be in the hole. You got to bucket it out with a rope, so I had to get some help. So I got some help, man. We're doing a bucket regrade, man. I'm down there digging and putting the dirt in a 5-gallon bucket, taking it out, dumping it off the side, and we're making some headway. And this is not that far off of a well-traveled dirt road. And the Forest Service catches me.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
So
said,
game
what
over.
are you doing? I says, man, I think I found a cave here or something. They says, you can't be digging that. That's a geological survey area. You can't be doing anything. You get out of there, you're going to be fine. Da, 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 da. Man, so the hole wasn't very big that was open. I was able to hide that up, man. I was able to take an old tree stump, turn it upside down, plant some bushes around it, and hide it back up. I was able to do that pretty easy, and geez, that was back in the 80s. I've never
Did you mark on some map where that is, or did you forget?
I know where that's at.
But is it only up here, or is it on paper?
No, it's in here.
Yeah, but don't let it die with you,
Yeah,
Terry.
that's what I'm saying. Like, is it only in here?
It's been long enough now, and so I got checking. I thought, well, I'll file a mining claim on this or something, and it was shut off to mining everything for a geological survey area. So I went up to there's a little hill on top of where that was. I go up there, and there's these two big conical shaped holes that went down. They're digging, exploring for something. I don't know what, but it's probably 8 feet deep and probably 10 feet wide, two of these holes. And I go down to the bottom, and I can see that there's quartz down there, a big quartz vein down there.
Which holds gold.
Yeah. So I never ever did anything with that because they caught me, but that's been back in the 80s. I need to go back and finish digging that thing out. And it just might be a natural limestone cavern. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there was a Spanish mark. The Spaniards was known to be in that area. You never know.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you, Terry, you have in your particular area, Utah, there's a lot of federal property and a lot of state property. I guess you really have to be careful about where you go because you're going to encounter a game warden or a Forest Service or somebody who's going to throw you out.
So here's the problem. You got the Forest Service and the BLM. You can do mining and prospecting, exploratory holes and stuffs like that, but the antiquities law, if you find anything older than 50 years old and you pick it up, man, you're going to go to jail. And guess what? If 10 years ago, if you threw a penny that's older than 50 years old, man, that's included in that.
Yeah.
They have the same laws in my state. If you're on state land, there's antiquity laws.
and that's a sad thing. The treasure laws. There's treasure being found. You will never hear about it because of those laws. There is ancient artifacts that could prove different things on different histories that really happened. You'll never hear about it.
Quiet.
What's that?
They're keeping it quiet when they find
the
it.
people that find this stuff, they don't tell anybody because of the antiquities laws. You'll never hear a thing about it. And so that's a travesty to history. That's a travesty to us to knowing, the history of what's been. Man, if they did something like Europe, where you get a percentage of the find and that's a great thing for keeping history alive, for learning more about history. We got it all screwed up here.
Yeah, it's a strange one. There's a question I'm seeing from Terry Archibald asking about the Skinwalker Ranch, which you mentioned earlier. Is that nearby you, Terry? Have you ever been there before?
Man,
Uh-oh.
have I got a story to tell? But
I see a smirk on his face, Doug.
I don't know if I can tell it.
Uh-oh. Use someone else's name.
So Brandon Fugel, the owner of Skinwalker Ranch, is a friend of mine. He helped fund, man, when we did the carbon dating on the.
Okay.
I've known him since the early 2000s. Man, when I'm going to tell part of the story.
All right, he's going to tell half the story, Doug. Settle in.
Part of the story. I'll tell part of the story.
Uh-oh, he's second guessing himself.
He's trying to dissect it to figure out which part he can tell.
Use fake names.
Well, it ain't a fake name, man.
Uh-oh.
I got a lot of stories. I just got to be reminded of them. And
right.
This is a big, long story.
Get your thoughts together. I threw this at you at the last minute.
Maybe I won't. Yeah.
He can't tell, Doug. He's worried about the repercussions.
Yeah, I totally get it.
Look, I get it. If you can't, I don't want, you know.
So
I don't want to read your body surface on some beach tomorrow.
Before there was a TV show, Skinwalker Ranch. I'll tell you this much, okay? Brandon texted me and says, "Hey man, if you promise not to tell, I just get ready to go down the deepest, darkest rabbit hole you have ever been down." He says, "If you promise not to tell, I'll tell you what." I said,
He's telling us now.
Well, I can tell you now because it's a TV show.
Oh, okay.
Before, he did not want anybody to know he owned
I
it.
see. Okay.
He did not want anybody to know, you know. And so I told him, he says, "I just bought Skinwalker Ranch, you know." And some other things happened. God, do I want to tell this?
That's fair. I don't want to get you in trouble. I'm sure there's some things that you might have to keep under wraps.
Well, anyways, he invited me out there. I had to sign a non-disclosure and that I wouldn't sue him if something strange happened to me. You know, I haven't been there yet. But this was way before the show, you know. Now it's gotten real popular. It was known about before the show. But I will say this. When he told me, he went to great lengths. He did not want anybody to know about this, you know. And so for people to say that it's all made for, you know, he bought it for TV, all that, he's a guy that just wants to know the truth, whatever the truth is, you know, whether it's fake or it's real. He just wants to know the truth, you know, and he was willing to put his money where his mouth was to find out the truth. And he told me, he says, "Terry," says, "I didn't know if anything," and there's a big long story of how and why he bought it, and I won't tell that story. That's his story to tell. But he says, "I've seen some things now, man," but he told me another story, and I'm not going to tell that story of why he did not want. Why I think he didn't tell me this, but you know, going through logic and deducting of the whole scenario. It's a reason that I think in the beginning he did not want anybody to know he owned that. He went to great lengths to hide that he owned that. He didn't want nobody to know, and it has to do with the credibility. I think again, you know, at the time, there were several people that lost their credit. They had big multi-million-dollar businesses, and when they came out and says, "Man," one came out and says, "I was abducted by a UFO, and I'm going to spend millions to find out who these guys are," man, they kicked him out of the board of directors kicked him out of his own company, you know, because went to stockholders, and the stockholders kicked him out of his company, you know. And I think something like that, maybe I could be way wrong, is the reason that he did not want anybody to know that he was investigating this or he bought this ranch, you know. So people say it's made up. Well, Brandon, man, he's a no BS guy. There might be a little bit of fluff in there, but he really is searching for the truth. And he told, you know, there's something to that story. But one of the things, one of the guys that's coming to our Moon Lake gathering, he owns the ranch right next door to Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh, cool.
Butts up. He's going to be one of our speakers. I was talking to him, and last year, I don't know when this happened, but he had a metal Connex, a storage container on his property. And this property is gated shut. you know. Well, he comes there one day, man, and this metal container is turned 90 degrees. You know, you just don't move that thing around by hand. It's got to have a big forklift to move this thing around. You know, this thing's 10 feet wide, 20, I don't know what they are, you know, 8 feet wide, 20 feet, 30 feet long. I don't know what they are, but they're big, you know, and they're heavy. They're metal. This thing's turned 90 degrees. His gate's still locked, so nobody cut the lock. There's no tire marks. There had to be a forklift to do this. There's no tire marks, you know. So he's scratching his head, and he had a pair of pliers in his hand, and I don't know exactly how this happened, but he's trying to figure out, man, how this thing got moved, and he bumped the pliers up against the Connex, and it stuck to it. The Connex is now magnetic.
Wow.
You know, and he's going,
Yeah. That's pretty cool, Doug.
Wow.
Doug, have you seen anything about that Skinwalker Ranch or any of the programs, Doug?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Is there a current show about this?
yeah,
What's the show? So we might
Skinwalker Ranch.
It's called Skinwalker
On
Ranch.
the History Channel.
Yeah, it's on.
on what?
The History Channel.
Okay, I'll look for it. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, how many seasons has been on now?
I don't know, 3 or 4, or I don't
Something
really
like that.
know.
But that's in your neck of the woods, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he said he's not as much into the aliens as he is chasing like these lures and treasures and stuff.
Yeah.
So Ryan Burns, who owns the property that butts up against Skinwalker Ranch, last year he invited us out to there to kind of look and see what goes on, you know. And so we went out there, and I don't know what time it was, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And I can't tell you what I seen because it just looked like stars. They were so far away, but something would appear out of nowhere, clear. I mean, they look like they're lighted up like little stars, you know. They'd come 2, 3, 4 at a time. They'd just appear. They was all of a sudden there, and then they'd zip this way, and then they'd zip that way, and then they'd go back and disappear again. I don't know what that was, you know, but it sure looked strange. And it was so far away that you really couldn't tell what it was, you know, but it was interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It sounds like the way Charlie Metal detects, Doug. Like he just appears and he's there and, and he's there and then they disappear.
That's right. Yeah.
But no, that's amazing. Listen, Terry's been on for almost 2 hours. I want to try to get him out by at least 9:30. I do really appreciate your time, your stories, your energy. Thank you very much. If anybody has a last question, put it in there. And again, if Teresa is still here, if you can put a link again to the gathering, it's coming up. You said, are tickets still available, or is that a sold out event?
It's you don't need a ticket. You just show up. We have no idea how many people are coming. We have no clue. It's like I say, it's free. We'd like donations if you can afford them, but if you can't, man, don't worry about it. Just show up, man.
It sounds like Woodstock, Doug. You're like, they're anticipating 500 people. They're going to get 30,000, have no water.
I'll be in Colorado in August. Maybe I'll be able to sneak over there.
Oh, you're in his neck of the
Zip
woods.
on down, August 14th, 15th, and 16th, man, at the Duchesne Event Center. And, man, we don't have to worry about getting rained on. We don't have to worry about it too hot, man. It's indoor, climatized, and a great venue. And this is going to be a great time. And like I say, man, you will hear stories there that you will never hear any other place, you know?
Yeah.
That's cool. Oh, Teresa did put the link in the
Yes.
video. Thank you, Teresa. And 5 Mile Relic Hunter had a good idea. Terry, why don't you put together a book or maybe a monthly magazine or something to share these stories? I mean, not that you're not doing it with your YouTube channel, but sometimes maybe something in print can be just as powerful as video.
That's true. I don't. Well, with ChatGPT now, man, you can do that. But I can tell you what I know in 30 seconds. It'll take me an hour to try and write it out.
Now, like you said, ChatGPT. I mean, heck, you can have a 600-page manual made in an hour.
It's amazing what that does. Yeah.
It's amazing, but it'll lie to you with a smile on its face.
Yeah, it does.
You got to be cautious with it. You got to prompt it right. You got to tell
Yeah.
man, don't lie to me. I want the absolute truth. I want, you know, because it'll lie to you and then lie to you again. It drugged me around a block for a whole month one time, you know, until I finally figured it out.
Yeah.
No, it's exciting. I would love to go there. I saw you put a lot of videos out on it. Do you do any live streaming from the event where people can watch it live and hear some of these stories?
So I've tried. I don't know how to live stream. I don't do very good. We haven't had good internet connections.
Yeah,
There.
that's true.
This
The internet,
event- This event will have so you know, anybody that wants to come and live stream and anyone who wants to come and get interviews, man, feel free, come and do it. You know, if you want to have this as an event for your group and have your group come and meet and greet you there, this is a great place to do it. Set up a little booth and have your people come and meet and greet you. You know, come and do it, man. It's a free event. This is just like-minded people getting together to have a great time.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds cool. You probably get a lot of ghost hunters too. That's a big popular thing today. Do you get a lot of people like us, you know, ghost hunters, paranormal, that kind of stuff?
We do get some of them, and you know what? I thought them people were all nuts until I talked to a ghost for 30 minutes.
Really?
And I didn't know he was a ghost. It took me 4 months. I didn't find out till 4 months he'd been dead for 10 years. And when I found that out, it blew my mind. I thought, what I think is real, I don't know what's real anymore.
Wow.
It blew my mind because he looked real to me. He didn't look like a ghost. He didn't tell me any great secrets.
Wait. Hold on. Wait. You got to tell this story real quick. You're telling me that you talked to a guy in person, face to face for a half an hour, and then a few months later found out that guy's been long dead already?
Yep.
What the heck is going on? Sorry.
I was going to ask you if you believe in time travelers. I didn't get a chance to ask that question. It almost sounds like that you would believe in time travelers.
You know, I don't know if like I said, I had my whole belief system flipped upside down. So I don't know if it's possible or not. I'm just going to say I'm open-minded now, you know.
Wow.
My ghost story was the Wayne Tuttle, the Dutch hunters put on that rendezvous in the Superstition Mountains, and they invited me to come out there. So I went out there. And one of the guys there is one of the directors of the museum, and he gave me some tickets to the Lost Dutchman Museum. So I went there, and it's a pretty cool place, the Lost Dutchman Museum is. So I go there, and I'm wandering around, done my thing, and I'm done, and I'm leaving. And this older gentleman with the name tag on, he stops me, and he says, where are you from, young man? Well, at the time, I was doing some work on a power plant in Wyoming, but I live in Utah. So I told him, I says, well, on the weekdays, I'm living in Wyoming, working on a power plant, but on the weekends, I live in Utah. And he starts telling me how, well, he was an engineer and he worked at all them power plants in Wyoming, including the one I was doing some work on. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, this guy, if he's from Wyoming, but he's here in Arizona, he must be a treasure hunter. He's probably looking for the Lost Dutchman, and this could be a great story. I'm thinking, man, I'll interview this guy if he's got a great story and put it on a YouTube, you know, do a YouTube video on it. But I wanted to hear what it was first, you know. I didn't have my camera on me, so I told him, I says, hey man, you must be a treasure hunter then if you came here from Wyoming. He says, well, more than anything, I like history. But I am looking for the Lost Dutchman, but I came here because of the climate. You know, he says, I don't like that cold anymore. I says, well, you must have a great story. Tell me a great story, thinking he'd tell me a treasure story, you know. And he told me, well, there is this one I heard that there was these coke ovens that was built by the pioneers. And I heard that on the mountain behind it, there's a heart-shaped rock, and I wanted to see that. Plus, I wanted to see them coke ovens. But I couldn't find anybody that knew where they was. And finally, I found this one guy who knew where it was, Salvador Delgadillo. So I just met Salvador Delgadillo at this Dutch Hunters Rendezvous. So I knew who Salvador was. And so he says, Salvador... He says he'll take me out there. So we go in my Jeep, we go out there, we find the coke ovens. I see the heart on the mountain, you know, having a great time. We start coming back and I got a flat tire. So we changed the tire, We're going more. I get another flat tire. So now I got to ride on one rim. And then I get another flat tire. Now I'm riding on two rims and they're way back in there. It's July. It's hot, you know, and then his story is how they got out of this predicament. You know, they had to do a lot of things. And finally they ended up hiking 10 miles out at night because it was so hot during the day. And then it's getting early morning. They hear some noise up on this butte. They climb up there and there's a dirt road up there, a motorhome, an old couple up there. They fix them breakfast, take them to town. They get with his buddies, man. They get new tires, come out, put them on his Jeep, and they drive out, man. It was great. I mean, he's reliving this story as he's telling me. It's a great story, but not one I thought would be good for YouTube, you know? So I never recorded. I wished I would have recorded that, you know? So I'm thinking, oh, great. So I said goodbye, and we say our goodbyes. Well, I'd heard a story. A guy sent me an information about him and his buddies was riding their motorcycles. They was long ways away, and they was near the Gila River, and they started doing donuts in the sand, and his buddy flipped up this old necklace that looked like it was a piece of Egyptian jewelry, an Egyptian necklace. And so I was headed out there to find out more about that, and I stopped in Apache Junction to say hi to Salvador Delgadillo. And Salvador Delgadillo, he knows a lot of the old treasure hunters. He knows a lot of the old stories. He knows a lot of things. So I stopped to see if he knew anything, if there was any Egyptian artifacts found in that area. And he tells me, well, there's this one guy, he found a cavern that had Egyptian or Oriental artifacts in it. He says, I don't know exactly where the cave is. He never would tell anybody, but I know the area. Come on, let's go. So, man, we jump in my truck. We go out there, and as we're driving clear out there, he says, stop. Look over there. See them over by the mountain and them dome-shaped things. That's the coke ovens that the pioneers built. And then it clicked, man. And this is 4 months later that I talked to this guy. You know, it clicked. Well, man, this is where Salvador took this guy, and they had the three flat tires. And I'm saying, Salvador, man, I met a buddy of yours. He says, you took him out here. You got flat tires. And he starts telling me, yeah, this happened to me. And the guy told me, yeah, that happened. And I'm saying, yeah, he told me this. And he says, yeah, that happened. And we were going back and forth. I says, yeah, I met him 4 months ago. And he looks at me funny. And he says, you couldn't have. I says, what do you mean I couldn't have? He says, you must have talked to somebody who he told that story to. And now he's lying to you and telling it was him, because that's Jim Hatton. He's been dead for 10 years. And I thought, whoa, you know, I'm thinking, no way, because this guy wasn't dead. I'm thinking Salvador just thinks this Jim Hatt's dead, and he ain't, you know. So
did you describe what the guy looked like that you were talked to?
Well, man, we're talking about 4 months later. I mean, I can vaguely remember, but I can't remember. We're talking, and it was just a blip of my timeline. You know, I don't really, you know, I can't remember everything, but I do remember the story, and I remember that. You know, well, I'm thinking Salvador's wrong. He just thinks this guy's dead, and he's not, because, man, I talked to him for a half hour, and he didn't look dead to me. You know. So we end up at the Goldfield Ghost Town there, and it's owned by Bob Schuess. And I'm sitting down, we're talking with Bob Schuess, and I says, Bob, did you know Jim Hatt? Bob says, yeah, Terry, you would have liked him, man. He was some kind of an engineer. He worked on all them power plants in Wyoming like you did. Well, he told me, man, that he worked on them power plants, you know. And I says, well, yeah, I met him about 4 months ago, and he looks at me like I'm crazy. He says, you couldn't have. He's been dead for 10 years, you know. So I go back to the museum. I'm going to find this guy because he wasn't dead. So I go back to the museum, and I look around first, and I don't see him nowhere. I go to the front desk, and I ask the guy, is Jim Hatt around? He goes, there's nobody by that name that works here. I says, yeah, I seen him 4 months ago. He's one of the tour guides or something. He has a name tag. He says, well, we get all these volunteers in here. Maybe I don't know all the volunteers. Let me go ask somebody back in the back that they know all the volunteers that comes in. He comes back. He says, oh, yeah, Jim Hatt. He was one of the guys that helped get this museum going, but he died 10 years ago. I wished I'd have videoed him, because when we was talking, there was a lot of people there. Nobody ran into him. So I don't know if everybody could see him, or they just seen me talking to myself and they steered clear. I don't know. I wished I'd have videoed it.
Can you imagine that video, Doug, that Terry puts out? I had a half-hour long interview with a guy who died 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That completely flipped, that completely flipped my belief system, because I'm thinking to myself, I'd have never known if Salvador hadn't have said, look over there, man, there's coca. I wouldn't have remembered that.
It's funny, Terry, on a coincidence is Rich, the guy, my buddy Rich, he hasn't talked for a while. He actually died yesterday, and he's still in the stream with us today. Oh, wait, he's back. He's back. I thought you fell asleep, Rich.
That made me wonder,
not asleep.
has that happened to before and you don't know it? Completely. I used to think these ghost hunters were crazy, man, and I'm thinking now I'm crazy.
I guess that's a whole nother cup of soup.
Yeah.
We've hunted at that house, Rich, that was close to your mom's, where the woman said that she was like a medium, and that's what she did for a living. Is you would hire her to, talk to your deceased ones, seances and stuff, and. Look, we were detecting her house, so I'm just like, oh yeah, like, because it's a little strange that that's your career, but some people might be gifted. What the heck do I know? Just because I can't do it doesn't mean they can't do it.
So Terry, are you married? And does your wife, if you're married, does she get involved in these as well?
So, I'm going to tell you the best treasure I've ever found. I don't usually tell anybody, but I'm going to tell you guys, man, it's my wife. We've been married 40 years. I found her in Vernal, Utah, man, while I was searching for treasure. She bought me my very first metal detector.
All right.
How long have you been married?
What's that? 40 years. It'll be 41 years in August.
Charlie, how long have you been married? Over 50 years, right?
Yeah, 57.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
57.
So she didn't used to like to go out and do things, but she's starting to go out and do little things with me more and more. She's getting more interested, more active, but she supported me. She let me go.
Yeah, that's important.
If she, I wouldn't have none of these stories if she put the kibosh on me, and she didn't. She says, go have a great time, and I did.
Yeah.
Hey, I wouldn't be interviewing you right now at 9:30 if my wife wasn't a good one. So I get it. Doug, you've been married, how long now? Over 30 years.
38 years this year and 16 in the first one.
Yeah. Well, let's not count that. That's a bit ending.
Well,
38 with this one. So, yeah, I've been married almost 25 years. And Rich has been with the same girl for, like a month? It's a start, though.
Hey, man.
It's a start.
Hey, get ready. They're gonna spring your 1 month anniversary on you.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I was in a 16-year relationship, so.
Yeah, and now he's in a new one. Starting over, Terry. Can you imagine starting over again? I couldn't.
Oh man, I
wouldn't even know what to say. I wouldn't even know what to say.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
I tell my wife, I said, if we ever got divorced or something, I'm just going to live alone. I wouldn't even know what to say. It's been so long since I had to put on the charms, the charms you did as a young guy. Wouldn't even know what to do.
Jason, I've been married 57 years. I said to my wife, I said, would you do it over again? She was lost for words. She didn't say anything. Yeah. She said she would, so.
I believe Charlie married up, Terry. I don't know if you married up or not. I married up. Doug married up. Charlie, we all married up. That's what you want to do.
I will admit that.
Yep, we all married up. So, all right, listen. It's 20 of 10. We're gonna wind this up, Doug. Let me bring it over here so we can all see each other a little bit better. It won't let me do it. I can't bring it up. But Terry, the story's amazing, fascinating. I appreciate you spending all night with us, and we're going to have to collect our thoughts and have you on again because your stories just go on forever. And I would love to hear more of just some of these crazy, mysterious things that you don't get to hear about in everyday life.
I got a lot of stories. I just got to jog my memory. They're stuck in there somewhere. But you guys, man, thanks for inviting me.
We had a blast.
This is my honor. This is. Thank you.
And thank you. And hey, thank Doug. You're Doug's first ever guest. We've been doing this live show for about a year. And I've had to book every guest for the most part, I think. And Doug came up to me and said, "Oh, you got to get this guy on." So Doug was really liking your stuff. I
Yep.
watched a couple, found them enjoyable. So
Geez,
thank
Doug,
Doug.
I really like you, even though you're older than me.
Yeah, it's all right.
So, well, hey, Terry, thank you very much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Don't forget, look at Teresa's link. You can go check out the Moon. I'm sorry, give me the full name again.
Moon Lake Gathering.
Moon Lake Gathering. It's coming up in about 2 months. Sounds like it's free. So
It's free.
get out there, hear some stories, hang out with some people, have a good time, and hey, you can get a picture with Terry. He's a super cool guy.
Yeah.
So, hey, Terry.
It's more like I get to get a picture of them because man, I would be nothing without all the information that's been shared. There's so many people out there who are way smarter, got way better stories than me, and I appreciate them sharing with me. So come share a story with me because I love to hear them.
All right.
Whole thing. Terry, thank you very much, man.
Thanks, Terry.
Well,
Have a good night.
I'll catch up with you. I'll have to shoot you a text tomorrow, too, with another reminder. But thank you very much for all your time, my friend. It was good meeting you.
Have a good one. Thanks, you guys.
Take
Bye,
care.
Terry.
Night.
Doug, I got I'm stuck here. I can't seem to.
Oh,
He
he kicked himself
eliminated
out.
himself.
Well, you
All
guys
right.
excited?
So, how did everyone enjoy Terry's experiences and stories? I was on the edge of my seat.
I'm back.
Yeah, a lot of those.
Really
I've
interesting.
heard of some of those, and some of them I haven't heard of.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was really cool. Like I said, I was trying to grab my head around all of his content. But Doug told me about him about a week or two ago, and he's got
Pretty
like
diverse.
he's got like 1,500 videos. I couldn't possibly, watch that much.
What's interesting to me tonight is as soon he was lost for words. He didn't know how to react to the Skinwalker story. It was interesting. His facial expressions, like, what really happened there? What's going on there? That he was trying to be very careful explaining what the story was there. It's like, now for me, I like to investigate more about that. I'd like to watch the show anyway on the History Channel about it.
Yeah, I really enjoy. I'll tell you what, Doug. I mean, I thought it was so fascinating watching some of these things. I might try to get more guests that kind of talk about some of these things that are not, so normal to me. The giants I thought were super interesting. These Egyptians and the caves of gold. I told you this archaeologist who's making these.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting if you can hook up with her and get her on.
I think I got a connection. I think
that's intriguing. Yes.
Yeah. So hey, we'll see. We'll see what happens. And I didn't even get to play my. What's that? Oh, I thought you said something, Doug.
No.
Oh, I was going to play my.
Rich hit a button.
Oh, Rich hit a button.
Yeah.
Let me see if I could do this real quick, and then we're going to get out of here, Doug.
All
Because
right.
I didn't. Hold on. I wasn't planning on doing any of this, but I made some of these AI generated images of these. What's the word? Nephilim.
Nephilim.
Nephilim. That's what I said.
Nephilim.
Well, I spent about an hour making some AI generated images. So these are not real. These aren't real photographs.
Yeah.
But I thought I would share.
No, really? I was convinced that they were.
Some people are gullible, so I want to be full disclosure. These are not actual photographs. But I just thought they were really cool, so I wanted to share them because I spent some time crafting these AI images. That one was cool. That's one of the ones I thought looked like Rich's cousin.
Yeah. Somebody, the bandit thinks that was my high school athletic picture.
Yeah, this is what's going to school.
See, what you see now is what happens when you stop working out.
He said there was another one. I think I had like 4 of them. Just a different angle of that guy. We're gonna call him Bill. I didn't come up with a name for him.
Bill.
He looks like a Bill. That one I didn't dig. I found that on the internet. I think the person who put this one up tried to claim it was an actual photograph. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I just come on, just the mystique of Giants, Doug. I thought was super cool. But well, interesting show, Doug. I kind of like the little bit of mystique, mystery. It's always cool to dive into something. So kudos to you, Doug, for finding some.
It wasn't that difficult, but we're all treasure hunters in a sense, and it's nice to get off on a little bit of a tangent with people that do the treasure hunting in a different venue. So.
Yeah, I agree. Not all treasure hunter has to be a
metal detectorist, although
it doesn't have to be
he says he uses one. So
it doesn't even have to necessarily be a physical, tangible thing that you end up with. It could be, a lot of his treasure hunting is the story. He's chasing the story.
Information, exactly.
Right. So hey, we only get one shot at this life, right, Doug? That we know of.
Yeah.
And maybe Terry knows otherwise. I don't know, but enjoy it. Get out there and enjoy it. But I'll give the final words. I'll go around. Doug, final words on the show, on life. Anything you want to?
I was happy with our guest, and I think our viewers, although it was a little less than normal tonight, I'm sure they all enjoyed it, and I look forward to talking to him again.
Absolutely. Charlie, I'll give you the floor, my friend. What'd you think?
Interesting. Very interesting. I've had mysterious things happen to me also that I shared, obviously, with my wife. And we had an old farmhouse that we rented out and to different people over the years. And they would always say to me, have you met the little girl that lives there? Creepy stuff. Yeah.
Like a ghost story.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Wow. Did you ever have your own interaction with this little girl?
That's what's interesting to me. I don't know why, but these different tenants over the years, they describe this little girl pretty much the same, about 11 years old, friendly, all that. I'm like, they said, are you aware of it? I said, I'm aware of it, but I've never met, I never met her.
Wow.
So, yeah, wow is correct. So...
Yeah, that ghost hunting is it can give you chills if the right thing happens, for sure.
Well, I was told something about me, I don't know what it is about me or other people, but I've never had contact with her, but they have.
Yeah. And
So
they all
that's
describe her the
bizarre.
same way.
Maybe it's my looks, I don't know.
Maybe.
I do scare little kids. I do scare little kids.
Even a ghost, you give off stranger danger vibes.
Get out of here.
Well, that's pretty cool. But thank you, Charlie. It's an awesome story. I bet that would have probably made him jealous if you heard that. Rich, final thoughts on the night before we get out of here?
Yeah, it was an awesome, really interesting show. I've watched documentaries about a lot of those things before. It's all the stuff I'm into. I think if I lived out west, I probably would look for some of these things. But I'm not traveling to do so. But I've always been interested in all of those things.
No, it's definitely cool. We'll have to look for more of these untraditional type guests, Doug, that are a different type of treasure hunting. Treasure hunting for the story, treasure hunting for mysterious truths that we weren't here. So yeah, very exciting. And maybe some more of these ghost ones. These ghost stories, when I hear about them online or something, they put chills going up your spine. You know what I mean, Doug?
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, well, we're out of this joint. We'll be back next week with a show going over the last couple of videos. So many cool things. I finally want to talk about that. I might even do a game and a giveaway next week, Doug. Little hint.
Ooh.
And then we'll be back with a guest the following week. So action-packed month of what's this, June?
Yes.
Yeah,
And it's getting warmer, and more people are going to be out detecting, and a lot more, hopefully, a lot more finds to talk about.
Oh, for sure. Yep. Yeah, we got a spot already lined up. It should be a good day. It's going to be hot. Make sure you put some shorts on, Dougie.
Actually, it's going to be nicer on Sunday. So,
all right, then wear a long jacket. I don't care. I'm just
I'm just going to wear a hood, sweatshirt and hoodie.
All right, sounds good. All right, we're out of this joint. So, hey, thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for communicating up in the chat. I was trying to read everyone's dialogue while Terry was talking. Really interesting stuff today. And like I said, we'll be back again next week, recapping some of the amazing finds from our last few videos.
Yeah.
So, hey, thank you for watching, everybody. Happy hunting, and we'll see you all in the next one. Later.
Bye.
Good night. Night.